Chapter 2553. The 30,000 people who died in the fire were the ones who bullied women on the street, killed strong men from Z country, and kicked their heads around like basketballs. This group of crazy people who didn't need any sympathy or pity were the scum of society. What? 30,000 people all died in the fire in an instant. The first to react and shout was not Kalamantan, who was the leader of the 30,000 people from in-country, but Zhang Heng. Captain Fan was startled by Zhang Heng's exclamation. Zhang Heng was a special forces soldier who came to support. Captain Fan knew Zhang Heng. So Captain Fan instinctively thought that Zhang Heng had brought reinforcements to save them. In spite of it, Zhang Heng's next words, pointing at Yun Jian, stunned Captain Fan and the rest of them. She had only sent 109 people, but these 109 people actually wiped out 30,000 people from in-country. There were only 109 people and no large-scale reinforcements. These 109 people wiped out 30,000 people from in-country. Captain Fan's face froze. Even the people he brought with him were dumbfounded. 100 people against 30,000 people and a total victory. This was simply 1 against 300. Was this even something a human could do? Who the hell is she? She's so powerful. One of Captain Fan's men looked at Yun Jian and sighed. But before Captain Fan, Zhang Heng, and the others could react, a large group of people suddenly surrounded them. One of them, a woman with an alluring figure who was dressed similarly to Yun Jian, walked over. 006, your team is not bad. These 109 people have been trained well by you. It's effortless to command them. Why don't you name a price and let me adopt your 109 people? The person who came was none other than Shinji. At this moment, Shunji raised her hand. Her slender hand brushed her long hair behind her ear. Like a graceful Buddha, she stood in front of everyone. Since Shinji had brought Yun Jian's 109 people to the crowd, it meant that other than Kalamantan and the few remaining in-country people, the other 30,000 people had already died in the fire. Even if he didn't die, he would be trapped under a tall building. If no one came to save him, it meant that he was not far from death. Clearly, Yun Jian and Shunji didn't care about Kalamantan and the others at all. Give me all the savings you've accumulated over the years, and I'll consider giving him to you. At that moment, Yun Jian walked towards Shinji. She narrowed her eyes and spoke softly. You're too greedy. I don't want it anymore. Just wash your neck and wait for me to kill you. Shinji clicked her tongue. After that, she curled her lips and turned to leave. Quick, hurry up and organize the refugees to leave. Captain Fan was very smart. Seeing this, he turned around and hurriedly ordered his men standing behind him. Yes, Captain. Captain Fan's men were overjoyed and with the fastest speed in their lives. They turned around and ran towards the 10,000 refugees. Originally, in a few days, a large number of Z countries' special forces would come to the rescue. But now that Yun Jian's men had solved this problem, it could be considered a great achievement. Otherwise, who knew how many innocent people and the special forces who had come to support in-country would have lost their lives here? Kalamantan saw Shunji turn around and leave. He moved his feet lightly, wanted to take the opportunity to retreat. But just as Shinji turned around and walked away, she suddenly raised her hand and pointed the gun she had prepared at Kalamantan and the few remaining in-country people. Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out. By the time everyone reacted, Shunji had already killed all the in-country people. She put away her gun and looked at Yun Jian. 006, I helped you solve your last problem. You owe me a favor. I'll pay with your life in the future. Come, Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2554. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yun Jian's lips curled into a smile as she replied to Shunji, that depends on whether you're alive to take it. Shunji wiped her pistol with a hand, as if she did not use it to kill Kalamantan and his men. She turned to wave at Yun Jian and left after a while. Jian didn't even bat an eye at the death of Kalimantan and the others. Any normal girl would have been scared by such a scene. Jian wasn't a normal girl, but as a special forces soldier, she wasn't shocked by Shunji's actions at all. It was as if they were used to death. Zhang Heng, Captain Fan, and the others couldn't help but look at Jian. Who are you? It was Captain Fan who asked Jian in shock. She could even order the Kosha mercenaries. Who was she? And that woman just now, what was her relationship with her? You could go now. Jian didn't reply to Captain Fan immediately. Instead, she spoke to the 109 Kosha mercenaries. In less than a minute, all 109 of them disappeared without a trace. Jian took out a forged contract from her pocket, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it in front of Captain Fan. Captain Fan was no slouch as he caught the ball of paper that Jian tossed over with a raise of his hand. He opened the ball of paper and read it. So you hired the Kosha mercenaries. You even used the name of the Kosha mercenaries. No wonder. After reading the forged contract, Captain Fan heaved a sigh of relief. But those 109 people should be the elites of the Kosha mercenaries. How much did you spend to hire them? I'll reimburse you later. Captain Fan asked Jian. Captain Fan, Zhang Heng, and the others were waiting for reinforcements to arrive in a few days and then save the refugees in one go. This way, sacrifices were inevitable. Now that Jian had intervened, the number of sacrifices would be greatly reduced. This was a good thing for Captain Fan, Zhang Heng, and Z Country. No need. Jian didn't say anything else. She pursed her red lips and left the place first. Looking at Jian's receding figure, Yu Shaoluo, who was lying on the ground and almost breathed his last due to the N-Nation's torture, slowly closed his heavy eyes. Yu Shaoluo's legs had been broken during the few days he had been captured by the N-Nation people. The N-Nation people had burned his skin to a crisp, and the flesh beneath his skin could be seen clearly. Yu Shaoluo had also been subjected to many inhumane tortures over the past few days. Seeing Jian's figure, Yu Shaoluo, who had fainted, remembered the look on Jian's face a few years when she said she owed a favor. He had thought that Jian was just saying it for the sake of it. He didn't expect that she really... The refugees were finally rescued, and Jian returned to Z Country first. Good Jian was worried about Yu Shaoluo, so he stayed behind to look after him. The days passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was the day before Jian and Si's engagement party. The day before the engagement party, Jian went to Hubble Island. This was a gorgeous pink beach made up of pink granules. Si, he hadn't arrived yet, but the little girl and the little girl were already dressed in formal clothes. They looked very happy as they rolled around on the pink beach. From afar, Jian saw Zhou Yiran running to the little girl who was rolling on the ground and handing her a flower. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Chapter 2555. He plucked that flower during art class last week. He's been treating it like a treasure these past few days. He won't even let me, his mother, touch it. He actually gave it to your little girl. It's too hurtful. Lan Su had unknowingly walked to Jian's side. She shook her head and looked at Zhou Yiran in the distance with a heartbroken expression. Although Zhou Yiran was only 4 years old, he had already gone to kindergarten early. He was very smart and understood at once. That flower looked like a real flower. When Jian looked at the flower that Zhou Yiran handed to the little girl from a distance, she thought it was a real flower at first glance. After all, they were surrounded by the sea. There were many coconut trees by the sea, and there were no flowers around to pluck. Don't be sad. Jian sat on a rocking chair on the beach, pursing her red lips and smiling. Lan Su thought that Jian was going to say a few words of comfort. But Jian's next sentence almost made Lan Su go crazy. You'll be even sadder in the future. In the distance, the little girl and the little guy were crawling on the pink beach. The little girl and the little guy were very sensible. Both of them knew that they couldn't run too far, let alone get close to the beach. At this moment, Zhou Yiran suddenly walked over and handed the little girl flower. When the little guy saw it, he fiercely yelled at Zhou Yiran and reached out to snatch the flower. Taking advantage of his height and age, Zhou Ran reached out and pushed the little fellow to the side. Then, he squatted down and took the little girl's hand. He gently placed the flower he had made into the little girl's hand. "It's for you." Zhou Ran opened his mouth clearly. "Yaya." The little girl widened her eyes. Those eyes that seemed to be able to speak seemed to ask Zhou Ran, "Is this really for me?" Even if the little girl couldn't speak now. When Zhou Ran saw this, as if he could talk to the little girl, he nodded and said, "It's for you. Since you took my flower, you can only be my bride in the future." The little girl suddenly giggled. She didn't know what a bride was either. She grabbed the flower and played with it happily. She didn't know that someone had already reserved her life with a flower. "Yaya, chi chi chi." The little fellow was piled up by Zhou Ran. Like a dead tortoise, he lay on the beach with his belly facing up. He didn't get up for a long time. He gritted his teeth and looked at Zhou Ran with a fierce expression. When Yun Jian saw this from afar, she pursed her lips slightly with a blissful expression. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Qin Yiru organized a barbecue at the beach. The next day was the engagement banquet. Almost everyone had arrived. Everyone suggested that since they had nothing to do at night, they might as well hold a barbecue party here. Everyone was outside at this moment. Yun Jian saw that the little girl and the little fellow were being watched. She turned around and went back to the house, intending to take a bath. See, he was supposed to arrive in the wee hours of the morning. After returning to the rented seaside villa, Yun Jian reaches out to turn on the light in the living room. Suddenly, a slender large palm pressed down on her small hand. Another large palm came from behind Yun Jian and covered Yun Jian's mouth. The person who appeared out of nowhere pulled Yun Jian to the living room table and pushed Yun Jian onto the table that could be entered at any time. The person covered Yun Jian's mouth and pressed down on Yun Jian with a force that even Yun Jian could not resist before leaning into her ear. The moment the familiar voice rang, Yun Jian felt her legs in a miniskirt being pressed down by the familiar figure in the dark villa living room and slowly parted. Xiao Jian. M. Chapter 2556. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Page 1/1. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation CE suddenly appeared and pinned Yun Jian on the big table in the middle of the living room of the seaside villa. A child's voice came from outside the house, which sounded like the sound of a drum in Yun Jian's ears. "Mama, Papa, brother, Mama, Papa, ayaya." The childish voice of a child rang out. After all, she was the one who gave birth to the child. Needless to say, Yun Jian could tell that the childish voice with poor pronunciation came from the little girl's mouth. "You said that your parents are in the house? Doesn't your father only arrive here in the wee hours of the morning?" Following the little girl's babbling voice, a voice that was just as immature, but with an adult's accent, rang out. It was Zhou Ran who left the crowd with the little girl and ran out. "Ayaya, Mama, Papa, brother, Mama, Papa." The little girl was easily carried by Zhou Ran and held by Zhou Ran's little fingers. Her other hand, which was so small that it was only half the size of Zhou Ran's, pointed at the door and pouted, as if she was certain that her parents were inside. "All right, I'll take you to see them." Seeing that the little girl was still holding the flowers he gave her, Zhou Ran was helpless. He carried the little girl's small body and opened the door of the villa with his other hand. Zhou Ran had just opened the door of the villa with the little girl in his arms when he saw the center of the big living room of the seaside villa. The moment he opened the door and turned on the light switch, the two children saw the tablecloth on the long dining table in the middle of the living room was in a mess, as if it had just been robbed. There was a floor-to-ceiling window in the distance, from which one could see the boundless sea, but someone had used a remote control to draw the curtains. "Mama, Mama, Papa, Papa, ha ha ha." The little girl suddenly clapped her hands. Zhou Ran himself was still young. He was only 4 years old. When the little girl clapped her hands, her body swayed. He almost couldn't hold the little girl steady, but in the end, he still comforted the little girl. "There seems to be someone behind the curtains. Let's go over and take a look." Zhou Ran comforted the little girl and carried her over. It had to be said that Zhou Yiran's perception was very sensitive. He carried the little girl and walked step by step towards the curtains in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Walking to the curtains of the floor-to-ceiling windows, he reached out with his free hand and pulled the curtains open. At this moment, two shadows flashed past the floor-to-ceiling window in front of them. Creak, creak. Outside the window, two coconut trees were swaying in the wind. The two shadows that resembled humans turned out to be an illusion caused by the collision of the trunks of two coconut trees. Zhou Yiran put down the curtains and carried the little girl out. The barbecue should be done. Let's go out and eat. Your parents shouldn't be at home. Papa, Mama, Yaya. The little girl was unconvinced and called out again. The 4-year-old Zhou Yiran reached out and rubbed the little girl's head. His face was clearly young, but it was slightly serious and steady as he said, "Wifey, be good." Yeah, it was as mysterious as a mystery. When the little girl heard Zhou Yiran's words, she was originally noisy, but now she really stopped making a fuss. Not long after, Zhou Yiran brought the little girl and left this place. Not long after Zhou Yiran left, C.E., who was hugging Yunjian and hiding outside the floor-to-ceiling window, lowered her eyes and looked gloomy. Yunjian pursed her red lips and chuckled softly. On the beach, Adam, who had picked up a mutton skewer and was about to eat, suddenly received a text message from C.E. There was only one simple and crude sentence in the text message. After attending the engagement party, immediately take your son and scram to the Amazon. You're not allowed to come back before the new year. Top reading website, M. Chapter 25:57. When Adam saw this message, he spat out the mutton skewer in his mouth onto the ground. He wiped his mouth and eyes and looked at the message from the young master. 3 seconds later, Adam cried out innocently, "What's wrong with me now? Zhou Yiran, come out, you stinking brat. Look at what you've done this time." He just carried Yuanyan out to play, Lan Su suddenly said as she took a bite of the barbecued sausage and crossed her slender legs. Once Adam heard that his idiotic son had gone out to play with Si Yi's darling again, it was obvious that something serious must have happened. Adam slapped his hand on his head, looking helpless for the first time. "Dang dang, your son is just like you, peeing on Tiger's head every day." Shuang suddenly hooked his arm around Adam's shoulder and affectionately called him by his new nickname. Shuang's new nickname for Adam was Dang Dang, in return for the nickname Wang Air that Adam used to call him. "Scram, scram, scram. Brother Wang Air." Adam slapped Shui Ying's hand away from his shoulder and said angrily. However, everyone knew that Adam's fierce tone was purely a joke with Shuang. Ha ha ha. When Shui Ying heard Adam's words, a joyful smile appeared on his handsome face. However, the deep scar on his neck looked a little sinister. In the end, Yunjian took a quick shower and came out of the room with C.E. "Papa." When she saw C.E., the little girl rushed over. Zhou Yiran couldn't hold the little girl in the end. He was afraid that she would fall, so he squatted down and put the little girl down on a clean beach. As soon as the little girl landed, she crawled over to C.E. like a little loach. Normal children usually started learning to walk at the age of 1. The little girl were only 6 months old, so C.E. didn't let them learn to walk early for fear that they would fall. However, the little girl could already stand up by holding onto the stairs and railings. The little girl could also stand up by holding onto objects if someone helped her. However, she still crawled normally. Furthermore, the speed at which it crawled was extremely fast. C.E. bent down and picked up the little girl before Yunjian could. "Mama!" The little girl looked up at Yunjian in C.E.'s arms. When Yunjian heard this, she pursed her red lips and walked over. The little girl held Yunjian's hand and bent down to hold C.E.'s hand, and then placed Yunjian's hand in C.E.'s large hand. He. When the little girl saw this scene, she happily clapped her hands and shouted. Of course, the little girl couldn't hold Yunjian's and C.E.'s hands by herself. Of course, Yunjian and C.E. doted on the little girl and would naturally do as the little girl asked. This little girl has turned into a spirit. Ha! Speaking of which, young master, Please forgive me. Send me to the Amazon or something like that. Or Adam walked over and laughed out loud. However, just as Adam said this, he was frightened by Si Yi's sidelong glance. Cough. Rascal, come with me. Young master, I'll definitely teach this rascal a lesson when we get back. Adam walked over and grabbed Joaran. Then, he left as if he was escaping. Only then did Si Yi's deep brows slightly relax. As soon as he turned around, the little girl used her completely powerless hand to hold onto Si Yi's head. Then, she used her other hand to hold onto Yunjian's head. She even shouted happily, Papa, Mama, kiss kiss, kiss kiss. Chapter 2558. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Shin Yiru's mother called her old friend, page 1/1. The little girl used all her strength to knock Si Yi's head against Yunjian's head. Yunjian's face was flushed red. Qin Yiru, Gujunjian, Shui Ing, Linwei, Imo, Sun, Luo Mei, Lan Su, and everyone else were standing around them. Moreover, the people around them were all looking at them. When Qin Yiru saw this scene, she suddenly remembered that not long ago, the little girl had held a photo of the family of four with Yunjian, Si Yi, and the little girl. In the photo, Yunjian and Si Yi were folded so that they were kissing. She was really a mischievous child. She knew everything. Who was the one who taught him that? Seeing this scene, even Qin Yiru was a little shy. Qin Yiru hurried over, clapped her hands, and coaxed the little girl in a coaxing voice. Yuan, come. Granny will carry you. Your brothers have all gone to the beach to ride the waves. Granny will take you to play with them. No. Kiss kiss. Kiss kiss. Sob sob sob. Papa mama, kiss kiss. I want to kiss. The little girl spoke in a voice that was not very accurate, as if she understood Qin Yiru's words. She shook her head violently, as if she was going to cry if she did not listen to her. The little girl's request was really too embarrassing. Yunjian really did not know whether to move or not to move. Just when everyone thought that Si Yi would reject the little girl's request and throw the crying little girl into Qin Yiru's arms, as usual, Qin Yiru carried her away. Si Yi carried the little girl with one hand and pressed the back of Yunjian's head with the other hand in front of everyone. He bent down and kissed her seductive little mouth. This scene happened very suddenly. Everyone was stunned. When they came to their senses, they all screamed, "Oh!" He kissed her. He actually kissed her in front of everyone. Young master. Young mistress. Young master. Young mistress. Adam led the crowd. Just as he shouted this, Lan Su hit him on the head. Go home and kneel on the washboard if you want to create more atmosphere. This was indeed effective, as Adam quickly shut his mouth. After being kissed by Si Yunjian, the next minute felt like a century. Her face was flushed red, and her cheeks were a little soft. Until Si released hers on her lips were her translation. Until her, was her translation her, until her, was translation, is, at 11, at translation, at around 11, at translation, add on s translation in buses at. It was Mo Buffon and the others from the Martial Arts Society, Xinjiang Town's Lu Fian, Chun Sini, Zhang Xiaofeng, Ling Yichen, the remaining 6 members of Team Monarch, T-Rex Squad, Most Awesome Squad, and Captain Lu Cheng were all here. As for the Kosha mercenaries, they were not here yet. The Kosha mercenaries had the ability to find their way here. Those who were close to Yunjian usually took the bus that Yunjian invited and were brought here directly. Moving isn't here. Yunjian asked Team Monarch's Chu Ning after scanning the area and not seeing Muing. Back in high school, Muing met her in Min's City Military Academy. So Team Monarch's Chu Ning also knew Muing. I went to look for her. She said she'll come tomorrow morning, said Chu Ning. Hearing this, Yunjian did not have any other suspicions. The group followed Yunjian into the luxurious holiday villa that could accommodate a few hundred people. Among those who came were Xinjiang Town's Qin Yiru's relatives. As Qin Yiru's mother, Zhang Meihua naturally came second. Just as they got out of the car, Zhang Meihua pulled Qin Yiru aside and told Qin Yiru, "Yiru, Mom called some old friends over today. You have to cooperate and not embarrass Mom in front of everyone." Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 2559. Today, not only were Zhang Meihua's relatives present, she had also invited some of her younger and older friends. When one reached middle age or old age, they loved to brag about how rich their juniors were, where they had bought a few houses, how many betrothal gifts they had received from the groom when their daughter was married off, how grand the engagement party and wedding were, how rich the groom was, and how well their granddaughter had married. This was probably what Zhang Meihua's generation loved to brag about the most. When they were young, everyone loved to brag about the things of the younger generation. When they were old, there were also things that the elderly would brag about themselves. This was a path that everyone had to go through in life. Zhang Meihua had invited some of her close friends who she used to hang out with. She had wanted to show off how great her granddaughter was in front of them, so she had brought them along. Yun Jian and Zhang Meihua had always been on bad terms. Of course, it was Qin Yiru who had arranged for Zhang Meihua to be present. Yun Jian would not force Qin Yiru to do anything, nor would she bother with Zhang Meihua. Qin Yiru could only nod helplessly at her mother's request. Everyone entered the house. Everyone gathered in the living room of this super luxurious seaside villa. Qin Yiru had prepared tea leaves to brew tea for the guests. At first, the group of old friends that Zhang Meihua had brought along were still praising Qin Yiru for giving birth to a good daughter. As the group of old women asked, they asked about Siyi's parents. Qin Yiru did not know, nor had she met Siyi's parents, so she could only shake her head. "Oh my, they're about to get married." "Yiru, haven't you seen how the other party's parents look like?" An old woman who was about 179 meters tall and slightly plump, but did not look fat because of her height, raised her voice as if she had picked on a bone. Zhang Meihua's family background. This group of old women had all heard Zhang Meihua's exaggerated boasting. Naturally, they were extremely envious. However, the other party was rich. Other than congratulating them verbally, the group of old women were secretly upset and wanted to pick on them when they spoke. Qin Yiru shook her head when she heard the old woman's words. "No, what about the betrothal gifts? They're already engaged. When they get married, how much will the betrothal gifts be?" The old woman, who was 179 meters tall, asked again after hearing Qin Yiru's words. After that, the old woman paused. Without waiting for Qin Yiru's reply, she continued, "Yiru, your daughter is the director of new cruise. She's filthy rich, without a betrothal gift worth tens of millions. I'd like to see who can marry your daughter. In this day and age, it's not enough just to be good-looking. In the future, the woman will earn money while the man relies on his looks. Sooner or later, they'll have to break up." This old woman with a height of 179 meters was called Wang Xuanfang. Wang Xuanfang was about the same age as Zhang Meihua. Wang Xuanfang was used to Zhang Meihua bragging about how great Yun Jian was in front of her. Now that she had picked a bone, thinking that Siyi was marrying into the family and Yun Jian was marrying into Siyi's family, she exaggerated. To put it bluntly, she was mocking Siyi for being poor and penniless. Yun Jian was amazing, but marrying a man who might not even be able to fork out the wedding money was enough to make her a laughingstock. There was no perfect person after all. Wang Xuanfang chuckled inwardly, thinking about exaggerating the matter when she went back. However, less than half a minute after Wang Xuanfang said those words, a cold and magnetic male voice suddenly sounded out. With lightning speed, he directly replied to Wang Xuanfang. "Adam, pass down the order. After the engagement banquet starts tomorrow, all restaurants in Country Z will operate for 3 days free of charge to celebrate my and Xiao Jian's engagement. All expenses will be charged to my account." Chapter 2560. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. All his money to her. Page 1/1. The magnetic male voice rang out suddenly. Other than Wang Xuanfang, the other old ladies, sitting in the living room of the luxurious holiday villa, were chatting with each other in delight before a sumptuous feast. Not all the old ladies from Xinjiang town were chatting with Qin Yiru. It had been a long time since they had gathered together. In accordance with the nature of old women who love to gossip, they were sitting around, drinking tea and talking boastfully. Of course, it was only a few days after the end of the year. The old ladies were bragging about their son and daughter's last year's income, as well as their grandson and granddaughter's academic results and results in their final exams. Wang Xuanfang had thought that no one was listening to her, so she spoke to Qin Yiru in a tone that she thought was considerate of Yunjian, who knew that right after Wang Xuanfang's last sentence about Yunjian and Si's falling apart sooner or later, Si's reply was like a slap to Wang Xuanfang's face. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone present was completely stunned. Yes, young master. It was only when Adam put away his frivolous smile and nodded at C.E. as he walked out of the luxurious holiday villa to arrange the matter that everyone snapped back to reality. Oh, all the restaurants in the country will be open for free for 3 days. How much will this cost? Wang Xuanfang was stupefied. Her rosy cheeks were now glowing white as she listened to C.E.'s words. Wang Xuanfang didn't know how to react for a while. Sitting next to Zhang Meihua was a short old woman with yellowish skin and obvious wrinkles on her face that had been crushed by the passage of time. She was a little tanned. She was a shrewd and frightened old woman. All the restaurants in the country will be open for free for 3 days. Let's not talk about the whole country. Even in Longmen City, it'll cost at least tens of millions to open for free for 3 days. In Jia Province, it'll cost at least hundreds of millions. It might even cost billions. If it's the whole country, then the short old lady's name was Rong Jiaoxian. She was almost 60 years old and was considered ugly among the group of old ladies. Rong Jiaoxian was a primary school teacher when she was young. She had a pension after retirement, so she was considered more authoritative among the group of old ladies and had led a decent life. She was considered a cultured person at best, but teachers who were usually fierce to their students when they were young were full of wrinkles when they were old. Rong Jiaoxian was one such example. What? Billions? When Wang Xuanfang heard the number of billions, she had already stood up with a swoosh. Her eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets, and her face was green and purple. Is Jia Province. Rong Jiaoxian said, is Jia Province? The 2004 population in 2004 was is translation is translation was I didn't know your son-in-law was so rich. But even if he's rich, he shouldn't be spending it like this. Ask him to take back his plan. No matter how rich he is, he'll go bankrupt if he spend it like this. Moreover, it's just an engagement. Can your daughter withstand such a grand occasion? Wang Xuanfang spoke to Qin Yiru after she recovered from her shock. She was trying to get Qin Yiru to talk C.E. out of it. Wang Xuanfang had thought that C.E. was not good enough for Yunjian earlier, but now she felt that Yunjian was not worthy of C.E. marrying her with such a grand display. Moreover, C.E. would probably go bankrupt if he did this. He might as well give them more in return if he had so much money. However, Wang Xuanfang did not have the time to finish her sentence. Just as Wang Xuanfang said that, Shuiying slammed his phone on the table without waiting for C.E. to step in. He glanced at Wang Xuanfang from the corner of his eye and repeated what C.E. had told him earlier. All restaurants in country Z will be open for free for 3 days. You'll only need to spend 10 days of my young master's income. Young master's betrothal gift to young madam is that all the money and assets in young master's account will be given to young madam. Not a single cent will be left. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy. Chapter 2561. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, endless fantasy translation editor. Endless fantasy translation, he would give her all of his money. Betrothal gifts were usually given by the groom to the bride. Usually, if the bride was having a hard time, she would keep some of it. Otherwise, she would return it all to the groom. To put it bluntly, it was Ce's betrothal gift. It was all his savings over the years, including real estate and his company. The betrothal gifts were given by the groom to the bride. Of course, they would not all fall into Qin Yiru's hands, but into Yun Jian's. If Yun Jian's family, Qin Yiru's family, was having a hard time, Qin Yiru's family would keep some of Ci's betrothal gifts. If Qin Yiru's family was having a good time, Ci's betrothal gifts would be returned in full. The more betrothal gifts the groom gave, the more glamorous the bride's wedding would be. In a village, if the groom gave a betrothal gift of up to 1,000,000 yuan as a formality, he would be considered a very wealthy family. Shuang confessed on behalf of Ce. He would invite all the restaurants in the country to operate for 3 days for free, and it would only cost him 10 days of income. All of Ce's money would be given to Yun Jian in the form of betrothal gifts. He would not hold anything back. This process would be completed during the engagement banquet and the wedding. What? Hearing Shui Ying's words, Wang Xuanfang, whose butt was still firmly pressed against the bench, slipped and fell to the ground. Before she could get up, she exclaimed loudly with her eyes bulging, that, how much money is that? Young man, what do you do for a living? Let's not talk about country Z. Even in the whole world, there isn't a woman who's more glamorous than your granddaughter's wedding. Rong Jiaoxian, a primary school teacher, rolled her eyes and almost fainted from shock. Zhang Meihua's face stiffened as well. As the director of new crews, Yun Jian had already given Zhang Meihua a lot of face. Zhang Meihua already felt that at Yun Jian's level, she would not be able to find a man of Yun Jian's age who was more outstanding than her. She had thought that Ci's wealth could not compare to Yun Jian's, but Zhang Meihua was smart. She knew that she did not have a good relationship with Yun Jian, so she did not dare to say anything about Yun Jian's matters. Who would have thought that Ci's wealth had reached the pinnacle of perfection? Moreover, such a rich, powerful, handsome man was willing to give all of his wealth to Yun Jian? In this world, who else in the world could do that? Men were with the rich translation once. And Yun Jian and Yun Jian Zhang? What about Ce? He was willing to turn all of his wealth into a rare treasure called love. He would rather turn from the richest man in the world to a poor man with nothing in his pockets to give her that rare treasure called love. The group of old women present had lived for nearly a lifetime. They were used to seeing couples break up. After getting married, they were still on guard against each other. They were also used to seeing people cheat on each other. In the end, they would break up and even see each other as mortal enemies. However, they had never seen a young man like Ce. He did not say, "I love you," to Yun Jian in front of everyone from the beginning to the end, nor did he show excitement at the engagement banquet and wedding that outsiders could see even if they did not want to see it, unlike other young people. However, he was willing to give Yun Jian the wealth that others could not afford. He did not even bat an eyelid. There was no lack of rich men in the world, but a man like Ce, who could give all of his wealth to Yun Jian when he already had it all, was a rare treasure in the world. He was using his actions to tell everyone present that he and Yun Jian were going to spend the rest of their lives together. A pair for the rest of their lives. Never to leave. Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2562. The engagement party was on the second day. It was already 11 p.m., and it was getting late. They still had to wake up early the next day. Yun Jian and Ce, as well as most of the guests of the engagement party, had gone to bed early. The stars filled the sky, as if signaling the end of the old era and the beginning of a new era. Huff, huff, huff. It was a different kind of night. Si Luo was holding a heart-shaped wooden stick used for blowing bubbles. She dipped the stick in the bubble solution and blew bubbles at the stars and moon in the sky. "It's so cold outside. What are you doing here?" Shuang walked out and saw Si Luo sitting alone outside, blowing bubbles with a wooden stick that he had made. He walked over and grabbed Si Luo's arm, wanting to bring him into the house. I miss home. I want to go home. Si Luo, who was usually weak, used her other hand to push Shui Ying's hand away as she spoke expressionlessly. However, her pouting lips made Shui Ying's heart skip a beat. Si Luo had never mentioned her home. Shui Ying had never asked about it either. Seeing Si Luo's upset expression, Shui Ying reached out to hold her hand. Then I'll bring you home. Not our home. It's my home. I want to go home. Sister Yunjian and the rest are so happy. I'm really happy for Sister Yunjian, but I want to go home. I want to go home where Daddy and Mommy are still around. But why is it so hard? Why was I so disobedient when I was young? If I knew that I would never see them again, I would definitely be obedient. I would definitely be very obedient. This time, Si Luo did not let go of Shui Ying's hand. She slowly squatted down and hugged her head. When he first met Si Luo, she was very innocent. However, her innocence was just to cover up the fear and dread in her heart. When I was 13, Daddy's business enemies came knocking on our door. They hired assassins to kill our entire family. I was stuffed under the bed by Mommy. I didn't dare to make sound. I just watched as my family fell into a pool of blood. I was disobedient when I was young. When I was 6 or 7, life at home wasn't so good. Back then, Daddy and Mommy would wake up before 3 in the morning so that they could eat every day. They went out to sell newspapers and pick up trash. Life at home was too hard. I didn't know how to behave. My family's expenses were not enough to buy me a doll, so Daddy went out to sell blood and bought me a doll. I was so happy back then. After that, Daddy's business and business. I've always thought that Daddy and Mommy Daddy and Mommy Daddy and Mommy Daddy and Mommy. At this point, Si Luo's body trembled violently. She paused for 2 seconds before continuing. When I saw Sister Yunjian and Mommy Daddy 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 were so happy. But now, even looking at them and talking to them is a luxury. I really regret it. Si Luo's innocence was half an act. That was because she had to use her innocence to protect herself. Only now did Si Luo dare to open her heart to Shui Ying. When she was young, she didn't know how to behave. She thought that it was natural for her parents to treat her well. It was only after she lost them that she learned to cherish them. However, it was all too late. Shui Ying didn't say anything this time. He only reached out his long arms to pull Si Luo into his embrace when Si Luo buried his head in his sobs. In the future, it's my turn to protect you. My kindness to you is something you should accept. M. Chapter 2563. Shui Ying's last sentence brought tears to Si Luo's eyes. She had always felt guilty about it. Her parents' death was irreversible, but she regretted it. She regretted not being sensible when she was young. She regretted not being as obedient and sensible as she could have been when her parents were still alive. But life was like that. Once you missed it, even the richest person in the world would not be able to buy back the lost past. No one's kindness to you is something you should accept as a matter of course, including her parents. That was why Si Luo had always been living in guilt. She hated herself for not being sensible and being disobedient when her parents were in their most difficult times. She blamed herself for not being able to repay them in time. But Shui Ying hugged her and said, "I'm good to you, so you should accept it." His kindness to her was something she should accept. She didn't need anything in return, just like how her parents treated her. That sentence made Si Luo's eyes turn red. She could not hold back her tears anymore. She pretended to be naive in order to survive. Even though Si Luo pretended to be naive back then, she was only half sincere. That was why no one realized it. But now, she was truly touched by Shui Ying's words. She used to think of the world as her home. But after meeting him, it was as if she had returned to her parents' protection. It was so warm. She had to cherish and accompany you. She would scold your parents for wanting the best for you. Because when you look back, you might realize that your parents, who had always been protecting you, were no longer around. The engagement banquet was held as usual the next day. There was usually nothing special at an engagement banquet. Friends and family would be invited for a meal and a chat. and that would be it. On this day, the most important thing to mention was that in Country Z, the couplet C, E, and Yun Jian, grow old together, appeared on every street and alley in the country. These words appeared on all the trucks on the road, on all the bus billboards in the city, and on all the restaurants in the country. This caused a sensation all over the world. Passers-by and residents all asked what was going on. A national celebration was probably nothing more than this. There was nothing worth mentioning at the engagement banquet. After midnight, the engagement banquet was officially over. Muing did show up the next day, but she had a worried look on her face. Mad Dragon was nowhere to be seen beside Muing. Yun Jian was a little confused when she saw him during the day. Yun Jian suddenly received a text message when the engagement party was just over in the wee hours of the morning. She glanced at the message and walked out. As she walked out, she glanced at Muing and explained to C.E. before she hurriedly left. South Africa, Moon City, at a scientific laboratory. After Mad Dragon agreed to the unreasonable request of the perverted doctor's son, the perverted doctor's son tied Mad Dragon to an operating table. The perverted doctor's son held a scalpel and rubbed it until it made a kacha sound. Mad Dragon, let's make a deal. As long as you give me your heart for an experiment, I'll save your woman. I won't go back on my word. The perverted doctor's son looked at Mad Dragon with a sinister expression as he said that the scalpel was about to fall on Mad Dragon's heart. Just as the scalpel was about to pierce Mad Dragon's heart with a bang, the door was kicked open. At the same time, a slender figure broke through the door and entered. At the same time, a butterfly knife stabbed into one of the perverted doctor's son's eyeballs at a speed that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Tisk! The butterfly knife pierced the eyeball, causing it to detach from his glasses and burst on the spot. The perverted doctor's son took a few steps back and wailed in pain. At that time, the beautiful figure who had just entered swept her gaze across the room, then stared at Mad Dragon. Suddenly, her lips curled up coldly, and she said something that frightened the perverted doctor's son so much that all the cells in his body trembled. Do you know how much money I spent to recruit him? How dare you lay a finger on one of my kosher mercenaries, slaying God's men? How dare you? Chapter 2564. Back then, Yun Jian had snatched Mad Dragon from C.E. After snatching Mad Dragon from C.E. and forcing Mad Dragon to join the kosher mercenaries, Yun Jian had to pay Mad Dragon a fixed salary. Mad Dragon's status in the world was second only to Yun Jian, who was ranked first in the International Secret Service. Although there was a huge difference in the price of their missions, Mad Dragon was ranked second in the world of Secret Service. In spite of it, as God of War who ranked third on the International Secret Agent chart, if Mad Dragon were to perish, Gusha mercenaries would be the one to suffer the heaviest loss. The psychopathic doctor's son who had his eyeball pierced by the butterfly knife Yun Jian tossed out wailed as he rolled on the floor, shuddering. When he heard what Yun Jian said, his other eye that was still intact widened like a fish's eye. He had forgotten. After Mad Dragon left an Hun organization, he had joined the Kosha mercenaries. An Hun organization wouldn't pursue the death of an assassin or Secret Service agent, but the Kosha mercenaries would. The Kosha mercenaries were known internationally for being protective of their own. When he was messing with Mad Dragon, he had completely forgotten that Mad Dragon was now a member of the Kosha mercenaries. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. He covered his blinded eye and rolled on the ground, trying to beg for mercy from Yun Jian. Seeing how terrified he was, Yun Jian smirked. She walked over and took out another butterfly knife. She cut open the ropes, binding Mad Dragon. Before Yun Jian arrived, Mad Dragon had already been stabbed multiple times by the crazy doctor's son, but Mad Dragon didn't even make a sound. You touch my subordinate. Now that he's seriously injured, he won't be able to bring any benefits to the Kosha mercenaries for the next few months. You know that the Kosha mercenaries have always been protective of their own. Do you think I'll let you go? Yun Jian stepped forward, her white shoes making a sound as she walked. She walked in front of the crazy doctor's son and said expressionlessly, No, don't kill me. I'll do anything. I'll tell you anything. as long as you don't kill me. Unlike the crazy doctor's son, the crazy doctor's son was a coward who was afraid of death. At this moment, he was covering his bleeding eye. He didn't even care about the unbearable pain of having his eye pierced. Hand over the secret manual that your father taught you. Don't play any tricks. I have ways to kill you. Yunjian saw that the time was right and said calmly. If Yunjian was like Mad Dragon, asking for the secret manual or begging him for Muing, then the crazy doctor's son would definitely think that he had something that others couldn't get. Therefore, he wouldn't be willing to hand it over for a long time. However, Yunjian had pierced his eyeballs just now. There was no way he did not believe that Yunjian dared not kill him. Like an obedient dog, the man covered his eye and crawled to the side of the laboratory. He took out a very old book from a hidden bookshelf at the back of the laboratory and hurriedly handed it to Yunjian. Here, I gave it to you. You said you'd let me go. After stuffing the book into Yunjian's hands, the crazy doctor's son crawled out. However, he wasn't even halfway out. Holding the secret manual the man gave her, she spun around abruptly and tossed the butterfly knife with her other hand that was swinging it lightly. With his swoosh, the butterfly knife pierced the man's heart from his back. Ugh, you, don't, speak, believe, use. The crazy doctor's son turned his head around and shouted with all his might. However, before he could finish, Yunjian was already in front of him. She reached out and pulled out the butterfly knife from the back of the crazy doctor's son. She wiped the blood on the knife with a tissue as if she hadn't done anything. With a red arc, the crazy doctor's son uttered the last words of terror that he would ever hear in his life. I, slaying God, have killed countless people. Well, have I ever kept my word? Chapter 2565, page 1/1. As soon as Yunjian uttered the last word, the psychopath's son's eyes widened and he fell to the ground. He did not even close his eyes as he stared at Yunjian. If one were to look closely, they would notice that his lips twitched in panic after he heard Yunjian's last word. His pronunciation was SS, the initials of slaying God. Cough. Why are you here? Mad Dragon had been stabbed several times. He turned to glance at Yunjian and covered the blood that was flowing out of his wound. Mad Dragon was smart. He knew why Yunjian wanted the psychopath's son to bring the secret manual that the psychopath had left behind. That perverted Ph.D. student had the habit of taking notes when he was alive, and all his knowledge and wealth were recorded in this secret book. This secret manual was the psychopath's diary when he was alive. With it, Yunjian could concoct the medicine to save Mu Ying and maintain Mu Ying's life. Therefore, the psychopath's son's life and death were no longer important to Yunjian and Mad Dragon. They walked out of the laboratory. Mad Dragon held the wounds on his body and suddenly stopped in his tracks. SS, can you promise me one thing? Mad Dragon coughed and asked. Tell me. Yunjian had finished wiping the butterfly knife. Her eyes were fixed on it as she spoke calmly. Don't tell her that I was injured and that I asked for medicine for her. Don't tell her that I almost died. Mad Dragon pleaded. Yunjian looked up and glanced at Mad Dragon for a second. The next second, she lowered her head expressionlessly and gave her silent consent. Work hard after you've recovered. The Kosha mercenaries don't keep idle people. That was a promise. Mad Dragon raised a brow and nodded. Yunjian returned to Hubble Island in the early morning of the next day. The engagement banquet was never going to be lively because it was reserved for the wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony was as lively as it could be. Yunjian and Siyi's wedding date was set. It would be held on the 1st of April, which was Yunjian's birthday. That was the day Yunjian turned 20 years old and could go to the Civil Affairs Bureau with Siyi to get their marriage certificate. Fortunately, there was still some time before the wedding ceremony. Jian, the guests have gone back. We should pack up and go back to Longmen City. Qin Yiru mentioned the engagement banquet to Yunjian after it was over. Mom, you go back first. I'll take Xiao Jian on a trip this afternoon. The engagement banquet had just ended, but Siyi addressed Qin Yiru as Mom, naturally, sounding like he had practiced it thousands of times. After that, Siyi kept a straight face as if he was afraid that the two troublesome children would tag along, but he added, It's just me and Xiao Jian going on a trip. Qin Yura knew that Ce did not want to bring the two children with him at once. She smiled and nodded. Okay. I'll take Yuan and Mingyu. Have fun. In the end, Ce's plan did not work out. Ce had planned to leave Hubble Island with Yunjian, but the little boy had noticed them somehow. As if knowing that Ce was going to leave him and his sister behind to take Yunjian out, the little guy scurried over and mumbled, "I'm not sure." Daddy, let's pee together." Peeing together meant that they were going together. Once the little boy came out, the girl noticed that Yunjian and Ce were leaving too. Both of them cried and threw a tantrum, so Yunjian brought them along. On the bus to Country D, Ce's chiseled features were dark throughout the journey. Both children sat on Yunjian's lap and babbled excitedly. They met a middle-aged man from Country Z along the way. Like Yunjian and Ce, he was also bringing his family to India for a vacation. Seeing both children sitting on Yunjian's lap and Ce looking glum, the middle-aged man greeted Yunjian and glanced at Ce before telling Yunjian, "You're both taking care of your children. Is this the stepfather of the two children? It must be tough for you to take care of them alone. Young lady, it must be hard on you. I'm a parent too. I know how tough it is to take care of children." Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 2566. The middle-aged man didn't know about the relationship between Ce and Yunjian. Earlier, he had greeted Yunjian. Now, he saw Ce sitting by the bus window, looking out of the window with an expression that said he didn't want to see the two children. Seeing that there was no expression on his cold face, the middle-aged man automatically assumed that Ce was unhappy with the two children's arrival. If he wasn't a stepfather, then what was he? The middle-aged man's name was Lu Jingdong. He was already 38 years old. He was traveling with his wife and two children who weren't even 10 years old. It could be said that he doted on his children to the extreme. Lu Jingdong was the biological father of his children, so he always felt that a child's biological parents would definitely be extremely good to their children. The feeling that Ce gave him made Lu Zhengdong think that Ce was the stepfather of the little boy and the little girl. That was why he said those words. Lu Zhengdong didn't mean to say those words. However, after he said those words, Ce's sharp black eyes glanced sideways at him. Seeing this, Lu Zhengdong was so frightened that his body trembled and he didn't say anything else. By the time he reacted, Ce had already grabbed the clothes on the back of the little boy's back with one hand and pulled him onto his lap. From the beginning to the end, Ce didn't say a word. They're a married couple. Why the hell are you talking about stepfather? You're the stepfather. Lu Jingdong's wife was a very honest person based on her appearance. After hearing her husband's words, she reached out to grab Lu Zhengdong's ear and gently twisted it. Then, she smiled at Yunjian. "My husband is outspoken and speaks carelessly. Don't mind him, little girl. It's fine," Yunjian replied. "Nonsense. Why are you still fooling around in the future? They're a loving couple." Lu Jingdong's wife patted Lu Jingdong and reprimanded him in her native dialect. Lu Jingdong scratched his head and really didn't say anything. Halfway through the bus ride, Lu Jingdong's wife started chatting with Yunjian out of boredom. Lu Jingdong's wife was called Chun Min. She was a very honest person. She had two children, a boy and a girl. Therefore, when he saw that Yunjian was young and had two children, one boy and one girl, he became interested and talked to Yunjian more. Yunjian and Ce's destination was the Golden Temple in D Country. The Golden Temple was a must-visit for tourists to D Country. The golden roof of the Golden Temple was built with 880 kilograms of gold. Its scale was very majestic. Upon hearing that Yunjian and Ce were also going to the Golden Temple, Chunmin hugged her 7-year-old daughter and said excitedly, "My family is also going there to play." It went smoothly. What a coincidence! In contrast to Chun Min's excitement, Yunjian merely blinked her eyes. When they arrived at their destination, Yunjian parted ways with Chun Min's family. D country wasn't rich, and the status of women in D country was very low. Yun Jian and Si Yi found a hotel to stay in. The Golden Temple was a world-famous tourist attraction, so very few people came to visit it. The hotel that Yun Jian and Si Yi found was one of the bigger hotels. When they entered the hotel, they met a group of tourists from Z country. There were also other groups from all over the world. After Yun Jian and Si Yi checked in, the group of tourists from Z country saw Yun Jian and Si Yi. One of the people in charge of the tour walked over and said to Yun Jian and Si, "Hello, everyone. Haha, I'm a person in charge of the tour group. Everyone calls me Golden Gold. It's like this. D country has very few toilets, and the status of women is low. I see that there are 2 women in your family. It's a little dangerous to travel here alone. Are you interested in joining our tour group? Come. Wonderful book house." Chapter 2567. Our tour group specializes in tourism activities and has even hired a few bodyguards to protect everyone's safety. After all, who doesn't want to return to their homeland safely and happily? How about it? Do you want to join us? The person in charge of the tour group, who called himself Jean, took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and handed one to Si Yi while introducing the benefits. Needless to say, Jean was the person in charge of the tour group. When he saw Yun Jian and Si Yi with the 2 children, he saw Yun Jian and Si Yi as glowing silver. Hence, he hurried over and tried to pull Yun Jian and Si Yi into the group. Unexpectedly, Yun Jian and Si Yi ignored Jean and walked around him into the hotel room. Seeing this, Jean snorted and turned around. "Hey, brother, did you fail to get guessed? Huh, she doesn't even care about you. But that girl is really beautiful. That waist, if I can ride her a few times, I'll laugh out loud in my dreams." Jean turned around and saw a man who was slightly taller than Jean. However, his facial features were uglier than Jean's. "I don't like that guy." Jean glanced in the direction that Si Yi had left. He put the cigarette that he wanted to pass to Si Yi in his mouth, lit it, took a puff, and blew out the smoke. "Why? Do you want to do him?" "Brother, I'll follow you," the perverted man in front of Jean said. "TSK." Jean glanced at the perverted man and didn't reply. The original plan was to visit the Golden Temple the next day, so Yun Jian went to bed early. At 3 in the morning, the little girl woke up because she wanted to pee. She cried and said the word shoo. The little girl needed someone to look after her, so Si stayed behind while Yun Jian carried the little girl out. She also wanted to go to the toilet. Germany was a country that was extremely short of toilets. Women here could only go to the toilet twice a day, and they had to go to the toilet in pairs. After asking around, the news he got was that the toilet was 5 kilometers away from the hotel. The little girl was fine after she finished peeing outside the door. After sending the little girl back to the hotel, Yun Jian walked out by himself. She planned to go to the toilet 5 kilometers away. Country D was such a country. There was an extreme lack of toilets. In Country D, the chances of women being raped when they went to the toilet in the middle of the night were quite high. Just as Yun Jian walked out, she bumped into Chun Min, who was on the bus. "Hey, are you going to the toilet too? I heard that the toilet is 5 kilometers away. It's not safe for us to go there alone. So, I decided to go with everyone." Chun Min greeted Yun Jian. Beside Chun Min were a few Z Country women who were traveling with the Z Country tour group. Since they were on the same path, Yun Jian didn't refuse. When the group of people arrived at the toilet 5 kilometers away, they all rushed there. Oh my God, even the toilet is 5 kilometers away in this godforsaken place. Luckily, I don't live in this godforsaken place. Otherwise, I would go crazy, one of the women said. Then, everyone started chatting. In the dark, Jean and the perverted man, who had followed them all the way here, accidentally discovered that Yun Jian had come out alone. So, in order to vent their anger during the day, the two of them planned to lay their hands on Yun Jian. I've attracted the group of old bachelors in town here. These women will probably lose their virginity. When the time comes, we'll cover our faces and no one will recognize us. We'll **CK all the women. We'll also save money on finding a prostitute. How awesome. The perverted man said in a perverted voice. Shoo, lower your voice. She's coming out. Jean suddenly covered the perverted man's mouth. They saw Yun walking out of the toilet. The rest of the women also left the toilet. At the moment when everyone was ready to go back together, Yun, who had walked out of the toilet as if nothing had happened, suddenly raised her eyes. The pair of eyes under her bangs seemed to be stained with strange red streaks under the moonlight. Then, in front of all the women present, as well as Jean and the perverted man who were hiding in the dark, she immediately opened her mouth and said something that made everyone panic. You've been following us all the way. Are you still not planning to come out? Chapter 2568. 5 kilometers away from the hotel, there was a toilet. This toilet was piled up with stones and looked dilapidated. Although the people outside could not see the people inside the toilet was so dilapidated that it looked like it would fall down with a push. Yun was standing 10 meters away from the toilet. Under the moonlight that was about to set in the west, her straight and slender figure was enough to arouse men's desire. But at this time, she stood in the same spot as if nothing had happened and suddenly said this sentence out of nowhere. As soon as she finished speaking, Jean and the perverted man who were hiding in the dark, as well as Chun Min, as well as the group of women who had come with the group to use the restroom, were all stunned. What do you mean by following us all the way? Don't scare me. It's so dark here. There's no one around. One of the women tugged at her clothes, and her face turned pale. She looked around and was clearly frightened to the point that she let out a cry. The other women who came with her trembled when they heard Yun's words. Among the group of people who came here, 3 or 2 were men, and the whole group was from Z country. Although it was 3 o'clock in the morning, the people from Z country had long heard that there were few toilets in D country. Moreover, the chances of women going to the toilet alone were very high. Therefore, these women gathered a lot of people in the middle of the night and went to the toilet 5 kilometers away. A few of the women even dragged their boyfriends or husbands with them. They were the 3 or 2 men who were standing at the scene. 3 minutes after Yun spoke, a woman whose husband was standing beside her was holding her man's arm. Seeing no one around them for a long time, she was not afraid of trouble and replied to Yun in a loud voice. What's the matter? There's no one. Who are you trying to scare? Can you please shut your mouth? Otherwise, you can go back alone. This woman relied on her husband's protection and was not afraid that there were people around. That's right. There's no sound around. You shouldn't scare us like this just because you're young. We're old and can't stand being scared. Another woman chimed in. As soon as the woman holding her husband's arm finished speaking, the rest of the women also agreed and stood on the side of the woman holding her husband's arm. Exactly. Who are you trying to scare? In a dark environment, people would more or less be surrounded by a sense of ambience. At this moment, the surroundings were gloomy. Only the round moon hanging in the sky that was about to set in the west could vaguely illuminate the earth. They were surrounded by trees. In such a place, it was inevitable that she would be a little scared. In addition, the crime rate in Germany was relatively high overall. Therefore, after confirming that Yun was deliberately creating a scary atmosphere, everyone present turned their attention to Yun. In the dark, Jean and the wretched man were first stunned when they were discovered. Then, they turned around quietly and wanted to escape. They had originally planned to take advantage of the situation when the group of old bachelors from D country appeared and all the women present were subdued. But they had been discovered. What kind of hearing did that woman have? Jean and the wretched man quietly turned around and prepared to leave. However, just as she and the wretched man were about to leave, all the women began to accuse Yun. Yun, who was standing on the spot, raised her hand slightly, and 3 knives were caught in the gap between her fingers. She didn't even look at them and threw the knife in her hand into the dark. No one saw that in the night. 3 knives were nailed to the thick tree trunk in front of Jean and the wretched man, who were about to escape. It was night, and Jean and the wretched man already felt guilty for doing something bad. At this moment, they suddenly saw 3 knives flying past them and stabbing into the tree trunk. The knives that suddenly appeared were like ghosts. Under everyone's gaze, the two of them were so scared that they screamed and rolled to where Yunjian and the others were. As they crawled and rolled, they shouted, F***CK, ghost, 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 what the hell, ghost, M. Chapter 2569. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Two silhouettes suddenly sprung out from the dark forest, causing everyone who accused Yunjian of scaring them to shudder. There's really someone. The woman holding her husband's arm was so scared that her face turned pale. She couldn't help but turn to look at Yunjian. How did she know that someone was following them? Tour Guide Jean. Tour Guide Meng? Why are you here? Just when everyone was panicking at the sight of Jean and the wretched man rushing out from the dark, someone recognized them and asked in surprise, Cough. We saw that it was not safe for you to come out alone, so we followed you and planned to protect you from behind. I was planning to secretly escort you back. Jean reacted quickly. He quickly made up a story and spoke as if it was true. Then, Jean pushed the perverted man, who was Tour Guide Meng. Cough. Cough, cough, cough. Yes, yes. Tour Guide Meng quickly said after being pushed by Jean. Tour Guide Jean. Tour Guide Meng, you're so professional. Thank goodness I chose your tour group. The woman holding her husband's arm was grateful after hearing Jean and Tour Guide Meng's words. Everyone else also looked at Jean and Tour Guide Meng with gratitude. Yunjian only glanced at Jean and the perverted man and didn't say a word. The next moment, her ears twitched, and she said expressionlessly, Someone's here. Let's go immediately. Then, she didn't care if the people around her followed and left first. With the previous lesson in mind, the rest of the group quickly followed after Yunjian. A minute later, a group of old bachelors from Country D arrived and realized that there was no one there. F***CK. Those two tour guides from Country Z dared to lie to us. We'll get him tomorrow. One of the old bachelors of Country D stomped his feet and spoke in Country D's language. Everyone quickly returned to the hotel. The next morning, Yunjian carried the little girl. He carried the little girl and walked downstairs. Early in the morning, they prepared to leave for Country D's scenic spot, the Golden Temple. Just as they went downstairs, they met the tour group. There was also Chunmin's family. Chunmin greeted Yunjian. Yunjian just nodded slightly. As soon as they walked out of the hotel, the little guy clenched his fists and made a few sound. Yunjian naturally figured out the attributes of the little fellow and the little girl. Without exception, the little fellow's voice indicated that the little fellow had peed. Children don't know any better, so they peed directly on the diapers. Yunjian asked Ce to put the baby down on a clean step at the entrance of the hotel. She reached out to change the baby's diaper. Let me do it. Ce gently grabbed her wrist and personally changed the baby's diaper. The little guy was completely unaware that he had wet his own diaper. His hands and feet were like a turtle when it was turned over, climbing up and down left and right. He was so cute that people couldn't help but want to kiss his forehead. At this moment, Chunmin's family also walked out of the hotel. Seeing the little fellow's face, Chunmin couldn't help but say to Yunjian, Your son is so handsome. He'll definitely be a handsome guy in the future. After hearing this, Yunjian politely thanked her. At this moment, he had already rudely removed the baby's diaper. He took a new one and skillfully changed the baby's diaper. However, just as he was about to change the baby's diaper, the little fellow made another sound. A stream of urine sprayed onto Ci's face like a fountain. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2570. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, Naughty Ce, Tiantai Hahu, page 1/1. Ce moved to the side the moment the little guy spat out the urine. His speed was too fast for anyone to react to. However, the little guy's speed was too fast, and Ce's shirt was stained with the little guy's pee. Ce's face darkened. Go back and change. I'll do it for him. Yun Jian choked back the laughter. She was about to burst out laughing at the sight of him. She walked over and placed the little girl on the steps. She quickly changed the little guy's diaper. Needless to say, the little guy was amazing. This was not the first time he had to pee while changing a diaper. However, every time he did it, he would not spill it on himself. Don't laugh. This was a profound skill that required a good grasp of strength. Siyi's face darkened as she turned and walked back into the hotel. Chenmin came over and whispered to Yunjian, "Hey, my husband said that your husband was like the child's stepfather. Just now I saw his eyes. It was as if he really wanted to strangle the child. It was as if he had a deep hatred for the child." After that, Chenmin winked at Yunjian. Yunjian's lips curved into a smile. The Golden Temple was located not far from the hotel. The roof of the Golden Temple was made of pure gold, and its value could not be measured by money. Of course, if someone wanted to steal from the Golden Temple, it was obviously illogical. After all, this place was heavily guarded, and the gold had been built inside the Golden Temple, creating a huge temple. Unless someone was able to move the temple. Yeah. Gold, 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 gold. The little girl clapped her hands excitedly when she saw the golden temple made of shining gold. At this moment, tour guides Jin and Meng were sitting not far away. Both of them were wearing masks. That was because early in the morning, the old bachelor who had failed to get his way yesterday had caught them and beaten them up. Jin and Meng Jin clenched their fists. Their anger towards Yun Jian and Si increased by another level. "Brother, I can't take this lying down," tour guide Meng said. "I can't take this lying down either," Jin replied. Suddenly, the two of them, who were originally looking at Yun Jian and Si's family of four, looked at each other and formed a conspiracy. To reach the Golden Temple, one had to climb the nameless mountain near the Golden Temple. Usually, people who came here to play would be recommended by the hotel to visit the Golden Temple first before going to Nameless Mountain. Of course, most people would visit the Golden Temple on the first day and Nameless Mountain on the second. On the way back, Chenmin made an appointment with Yun Jian to go to Nameless Mountain with Yun Jian the next day. Yun Jian agreed. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Yun Jian finally coaxed the little fellow and the little girl to sleep. See, he went in the bathroom to take a bath. The two of them made a lot of noise and didn't fall asleep until midnight. Seeing that the night was beautiful, Yun Jian brought the telescope that the two of them insisted on buying when they were shopping at the Golden Temple and went up to the rooftop, the highest floor of the hotel. The highest floor of the hotel was the 6th floor, the highest floor in the vicinity. Looking down from here, they could see the entire scene, but the rooftop of the hotel could not be seen from other floors. The night was dark. Yun Jian held the telescope with one hand and looked at the stars and moon in the sky. Bang, Katja! Suddenly, the rooftop door at the back was opened, closed, and locked. Yun Jian squinted. Just as she was about to turn around to find out what was going on, a familiar chest came into her embrace. "Xiao Jian, it's been a long time since we last met." The moment the rich voice rang, Yun Jian could even feel a certain part of Si Yi's desire swelling and pushing against her. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2571. Yun Jian hadn't come to the rooftop to let Si Yi do this. Even if the rooftop of this hotel was on the 6th floor, it was pitch black and the moon wasn't very bright. Dark clouds had covered the sky, so there wasn't a single bit of light in the surroundings. She wouldn't cooperate with him here. "Let's go back. The children are still here." Yun Jian was about to say this when she suddenly felt Si Yi gently bite her most sensitive ear. In that instant, Yun Jian felt her entire body go numb. However, Si Yi seemed determined to have her this time. He grabbed Yun Jian's wrist with one hand and reached his other hand into the corner of her shirt. Under Yun Jian's loose clothes, he grabbed her tender spot. Yun Jian couldn't help but let out a soft moan. She hurriedly covered her mouth and leaned against Si Yi's shoulder. With her height, she only reached Si Yi's chin. She tiptoed so that her chin could reach his shoulder. When Ce heard Yun Jin's soft moan, his eyes turned scarlet. In the next moment, he carried Yun Jin horizontally and walked to the rooftop warehouse door. He kicked open the door and carried Yun Jin inside. The night was still very long. Unknowingly, the dark clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, revealing the full moon and countless stars. The twinkling stars flickered. Two of them gradually approached each other and eventually overlapped with each other. It was just like someone in the rooftop warehouse. The next day, Yun Jin woke up at around 10 in the afternoon. At this time, Chun Min's family should have been waiting for quite some time. However, Chun Min's family was very friendly. They didn't blame Yun Jin for oversleeping and even asked Yun Jin if she was too tired from playing with the two children yesterday. Actually, taking care of the two children wasn't tiring for Yun Jin at all. She was the one who was tired. "I'm fine," Yun Jin replied indifferently. Chun Min also had a husband. Seeing Yun Jin like this, she just smiled. There were many people climbing the Nameless Mountain. Other than the Golden Temple, the Nameless Mountain was a must-visit attraction because this place was very beautiful. All the stones, flowers, and trees were all natural, and the air here was very fresh. Yun Jin and the others quickly climbed to the top of the mountain. What made Yun Jin feel strange was that she had been in the circle of assassins and secret agents for so many years. Except for the beginning, she had never felt sore in her legs. But today, when she carried the little girl up the mountain, her beautiful legs actually trembled involuntarily. Because of the little fellow and the little girl, he hadn't tasted anything fresh for a long time. Yesterday, he had done it with her 8 times in one go. Yun Jin even suspected that he had 8 kidneys. We're almost at the suspension bridge. Nameless Mountain is most famous for its suspension bridge. This suspension bridge was suspended from the cliff of the two mountains. The bridge was 600 meters above the ground. Because it was very sturdy, everyone wanted to walk on it. It was exciting and thrilling. Let's go too. Just thinking about it makes me excited. If someone stands on it and the suspension bridge collapses, they will fall from 600 meters. Chun Min excitedly led Yun Jin and the others to the suspension bridge that was suspended from the cliff of the two mountains. The suspension bridge was 100 meters long. Chun Min quickly led Yun Jin's family of 4 to the suspension bridge. Just as they walked onto the swaying suspension bridge, the suspension bridge swayed left and right. Chun Min panicked. "Oh my God, don't tell me we're going to fall." Chun Min looked down at the 600 meters below them, and her face turned pale. Of course not. The surrounding area is well protected. So many people have walked on this suspension bridge and nothing happened. How can we be the only ones in trouble? A stranger laughed and said. At this moment, Yun Jin and the others walked to the center of the suspension bridge. Because below them was an empty 600 meters in the air, everyone was a little frightened. However, just as the man finished speaking, the chain on the side of the drawbridge suddenly loosened a little. Everyone panicked and didn't dare to move. In the next second, the chain suddenly loosened without warning. The chain on the left side of the suspension bridge broke. At this moment, someone's frightened voice rang out. Hearing that, everyone who was still standing on the suspension bridge turned pale with fright. If the suspension bridge collapsed, it would be equivalent to them falling off a 600-meter high cliff. They would definitely die. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of the chain gradually breaking was like a nightmare that lingered in everyone's ears. It's over. It's over this time. I don't want to die. The people standing on the suspension bridge were so frightened that they didn't dare to move. They were afraid that if they moved, the sound of the chain breaking would become even faster. The workers by the cliff were already thinking of a solution. However, just as the chain was about to break completely, and everyone thought that the people standing on the suspension bridge would be thrown off the cliff. Chapter 2572. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Page 1/1. The suspension bridge was 100 meters long. Huge, thick chains and some special materials were used to hang the bridge from the edge of the cliff between the two mountains. The bridge was firmly suspended in the air between the two mountains, which were 600 meters above the ground without any defensive measures. There were a few small suspension bridges that were suspended above the water, and the suspension bridges were only half a meter above the water. Even if there was a lake flowing violently below, there was a suspension bridge on both sides of the lake. Ordinary people who walked across the suspension bridge would be scared to death, because there were at least dozens of people standing on the suspension bridge. Some people would hold the railing and violently step on it in order to increase the excitement. At this time, even if they imagined themselves falling into the lake, they would panic and tremble. Not to mention that Yun Jian and the rest were standing on a suspension bridge that was 600 meters above the ground. If they fell, it would be a dead end. Furthermore, the suspension bridge's defensive measures were usually very sturdy and should be 100% safe. But the chains suddenly broke. This was something that no one could imagine. When the suspension bridge broke, there were at least 100 people on the suspension bridge. With so many people, even if the workers at the side pulled on the chains, they would not have the strength to hold on until the people at the foot of the mountain came to rescue them. In this kind of situation, it was usually certain death. Just when everyone thought that they were scared out of their wits, Yun Jian suddenly flipped over and stepped on the thin railings of the suspension bridge. Like a circus performer walking on a tightrope, she walked on the railings that were used as handrails when people walked on the suspension bridge. Not only did she not fall, moreover, she was sprinting towards the side of the cliff where the suspension bridge had broken the iron chain. The suspension bridge was full of people, and walking on the railings was the fastest way to reach the cliff. But other than Yun Jian, most people would not even be able to stand on the railings. Even the circus performer who walked on a tightrope would not be able to do this in this kind of situation. Quickly look, that young lady. She actually. The workers at the side suddenly saw Yun Jian stepping on the railings of the suspension bridge and running towards them at a speed that could not be seen by the naked eye. They were so shocked that they shouted out loud. Heavens, what was she trying to do? We're going to fall. We're really going to fall. Who the hell is this woman? Mommy, save me. The tourists, who were hugging the railing of the suspension bridge tightly, did not dare to move. When they saw what Yun Jian did, their faces turned pale with fright. Stop her! The chains were unstable to begin with. She was running on the railing of the drawbridge again, and we could hardly hold on to the chain. Hurry up! Stop her! Fortunately, the iron chain slowly loosened. Just now, when the staff reacted, they had already hugged the iron chain tightly. The rest of the people who didn't get on the suspension bridge and were compassionate also ran up to help the workers pull the chains. However, there were nearly 100 people on the suspension bridge. Their strength was not enough to pull on the chains, and they would not be able to hold on for long. Especially now that Yun Jian was running on the railing of the suspension bridge. It was simply putting pressure on them. Quick, stop her. We can't hold on any longer. Is the engineer who can repair the chains on the mountain? A staff member pulled on the completely broken chain with everyone else. He used all his strength, and even the veins on his neck were protruding. He used all his strength to yell in a hoarse voice. Everyone who was holding on to the broken end of the chain used all their strength. Not everyone in the world was evil. This group of people who reached out to help had no relationship with the people trapped on the suspension bridge, but they reached out to help and held on to the chains tightly. Their feet were slowly inching towards the edge of the cliff. They could let go, and then they would be safe, but they were still trying their best. They could not hold on any longer. Just when everyone thought that the people on the suspension bridge would be thrown off the cliff like a kite with a broken string, Yun Jian had already landed on the flat ground with ease. She quickly walked to the broken chain, and without saying anything, she took the tool that she had prepared to use again. She used the tool to rub the broken part of the chain, and in a few moves, the broken part of the chain was perfectly repaired. She successfully completed this series of steps in less than a minute. At this moment, the workers who were holding on tightly to the chains and waiting for the engineer to come up and fix the chains, as well as the tourists, including the people on the suspension bridge who were criticizing Yun Jian for putting pressure on them, were all stunned. Their eyes widened. 3 minutes later, the staff from just now took the lead and exclaimed at Yunjian when they realized what was going on. Are you the top engineer in the world? Normal engineers would not be able to repair the suspension bridge so quickly. We hired the top engineers in the world to maintain and build the suspension bridge. Around us, only Mr. Kinani has the ability to fix the current problem. May I know your name? Translator, Tim. Editor, Tim. Chapter 2573. There were so many people at the scene just now, and there were also repair tools at the scene. However, the staff and the tourists were desperately holding on to the iron chain. No one tried to fix it because no one knew how to fix it. Actually, it wasn't that there weren't any engineers at the scene, but this engineer didn't know how to fix such a difficult thing. This engineer only checked the safety factor of the suspension bridge every day. Don't be fooled by the dangerous games in the amusement park, as well as the suspension bridge, where one mistake could lead to heavy losses. It required the relevant personnel to be stationed all year round to check the danger factor every day. After this staff member took the lead to call out to Yunjian, the surrounding people were all stunned. The people on the suspension bridge were scared silly. Everyone immediately left the suspension bridge. The women were all wiping their tears. It was obvious that they were really frightened. As for the men who didn't want to cry because of their pride, they were so scared that their legs were trembling. Scared, scare me to death. I don't dare to come to this kind of place anymore. Chunmin hugged her child tightly. She was so scared that her face turned pale. Even at the most frightening moment just now, Chunmin's first reaction was to hug her child tightly. Just now, the situation was urgent. When they went up the mountain, he was carrying the two children because he was afraid that Yunjian would be tired. That was why Yunjian was able to rush to the cliff to save the situation. At that time, he didn't have the slightest bit of modesty. The little girl and the little guy were laughing and playing with each other in Ci's arms. They didn't feel the slightest bit of danger. After recovering from her shock, Chunmin walked to Yunjian. She saw that Yunjian's family of four didn't seem frightened at all. She swallowed hard and said to Yunjian, You weren't scared just now? You actually did something so dangerous. What if you fell? Chunmin had just finished speaking when Yunjian interrupted her. In my world, there are no accidents. In her world, there was only success. There were no accidents. Chunmin swallowed her saliva and didn't say anything else. The accident happened too suddenly, but thank you very much. On behalf of all the staff and all the tourists who almost died on the suspension bridge, I would like to apologize to you for doubting your ability. Thank you, young lady. After a false alarm, the staff member walked up to Yunjian and bowed to her sincerely. The staff member thought that Yunjian would say, You're welcome, but Yunjian sneered and said to him in a sarcastic tone, Do you really think that the breaking of the chain was an accident? The staff member was stunned. What do you mean? Investigate who sent the staff away to touch the chains yesterday and today. You will definitely know what is going on. Yunjian glanced at the staff coldly. Just now, her child was also on the suspension bridge. This accident that almost happened was completely caused by the negligence of the staff. This was not something that could be forgiven with just a word of thanks and an apology. It's him. It must be those two. Now that I think about it, they made excuses to send us away this morning. It must be them. One of the staff members also heard Yunjian's words. The staff member frowned and suddenly pointed at Jinjin and tour guide Meng, who were standing not far away. Everyone was shocked. Jinjin and tour guide Meng saw this and didn't say anything to refute. They were so scared that they turned around and ran away. Stop them. Quick. The crowd panicked. But just as Jinjin and tour guide Meng were about to walk down the mountain, everyone saw a small figure swish in front of Jinjin and tour guide Meng. She raised her leg high and kicked Jinjin and tour guide Meng to the ground. Several staff members quickly rushed over. Yunjian kicked Jinjin and tour guide Meng in front of several staff members and said coldly, Send these two guys to the international prison. Tell them the code word. If they become gods by killing, they will never be able to get out of prison in this lifetime. Chapter 2574, page 1/1. Killing to become a god was a code word. The international prison was a place to imprison international criminals. It was said that once you entered the international prison, you could forget about coming out alive. Those who were sent to the international prison either had their arms or legs broken. Their lives that were more painful than death. And Yun Jian had some friendship with the boss of the international prison. In other words, Jin Jin and tour guide Meng's actions had seriously endangered the lives of many people. Yun Jian, on the other hand, told the staff to throw Jin Jin and tour guide Meng into the international prison. This was no different from killing Jin Jin and tour guide Meng. This staff member was almost killed by Jin Jin and tour guide Meng. If the suspension bridge broke, everyone would be buried here. Jin Jin and tour guide Meng would not leave any traces, and the staff would be the ones to suffer. Perhaps because of Jin Jin and tour guide Meng, these staff members would be ruined for the rest of their lives. One had to know that since the suspension bridge was built, it meant that the suspension bridge was definitely not dangerous. Of course, unless it was man-made. The staff member was disgusted with Jin Jin and tour guide Meng after finding out about their behavior. Hearing Yun Jian's words, the staff member hurriedly responded, "Good. I will make sure that they are severely punished." At this time, the tourists who had just escaped from the suspension bridge heard about this. They stood up one by one and personally escorted Jin Jin and tour guide Meng away. The group of tourists who had been brought to D country by Jin Jin and tour guide Meng all exclaimed, "Those two evil people! To think that I thought they were good people. I didn't expect them to almost harm us. This kind of scum deserves to die." As it turned out, Jin Jin and tour guide Meng were done for. After staying in Country D for 3 days, Yun Jian and Si did not stay for long, returning to Longmen City in a low-key manner by car. After Yun Jian and Si returned to Longmen City, the next day, the news reported that 2 tour guides of a certain tour group had lost their humanity and hundreds of innocent people had died at Country D's nameless mountain. In the end, perhaps even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore. On the way to the international prison, the truck carrying them suddenly flipped over and went down the mountain. Jin Jin and tour guide Meng were killed on the spot. On the other hand, the driver of the truck was completely unscathed. There was no sign of injury at all. When Yun Jian saw the news, she closed her eyes and turned to look at Ce, who was staring at her intently. Needless to say, this matter was definitely done by him. Of course, Yun Jian didn't ask too much. She packed her luggage and planned to go back to school in Jiangxing City. After a while, she would set off for Yun Province's Hidden Dragon Mountain. On the Hidden Dragon Mountain, there was a third artifact that was enough to kill the mysterious man. She had never forgotten. But before that, she had to go back to Jiangxing City to study for a period of time. It had been a long time since he went back. When Ce saw that she was halfway through packing, he stretched out his slender fingers and massaged his temples. "Xiao Jian, if there's something I'm hiding from you, will you blame me?" he asked abruptly. His words made Yun Jian's hand pause in the middle of packing. "It's okay if you blame me. You're mine when you're alive, and you're mine when you're dead." Ce moved his lips and passed a document to Yun Jian in the next second. Yun Jian merely glanced at the document nonchalantly. Her pupils contracted in the next second. Yun Jian, who had always been calm, looked shocked. On the document that made Yun Jian's expression change, it was written as follows. Top reading website. Chapter 2575. There weren't many things in the world that could make Yun Jian reveal such an expression. However, what was written in the information was beyond Yun Jian's imagination. "Is this true?" Yun Jian pursed her red lips. Her shocked and incredulous expression was replaced by an unconcealable joy. "I've been hiding it from you because of Han's rules. They don't allow the assassins and agents in the organization to have any attachments. Your brother is an exception." Ce nodded. He had been hiding this from her for a long time. At first, it was because he had lost his memory of being a senior immortal and didn't recognize Yun Jian. Therefore, he only treated her as an agent of Han. Later, he couldn't bring himself to say it. He was afraid that the loving relationship he had built with great difficulty would be ruined by this incident. Finally, he mustered up the courage to speak. As the leader of an Hun, Ce killed people without batting an eyelid. He never did things sloppily. However, when it came to her, whenever it concerned her, even if he had done something bad to her, he would hesitate for a long time, mustering up the courage to speak. These words didn't exist in Ce's mind before he met Yunjian. Ce was already prepared for Yunjian to be angry with him after she read the information he gave her. However, Yunjian's hand that was holding the information trembled violently. In the next moment, she suddenly threw the information on the floor and rushed up to him. She hugged Ce. Then, she used her actions to tell Ce that after she found out about this incident, it didn't matter if she was angry or not. Instead, she became even more proactive. That night, Ce enjoyed Yunjian's unprecedented actions. For Yunjian to be so proactive after she found out, Ce must have taken out this information when he had just confirmed his relationship with Yunjian. Then, wouldn't he be able to eat meat earlier? He might even have formed a football team. He Province, Suzhou. As a province in the central region, He Province wasn't prosperous, but it didn't retire either. In Suzhou of He Province, the class differentiation was very obvious. In the city, the rich were filthy rich, while the poor were so poor that they had to beg. In this era, the country had yet to give all homeless people a place to stay. Now, there were no longer any homeless people who begged on the streets. They didn't even have a place to sleep at night, so they had to sleep in the gutters. That was because the country was paying for these poor homeless people. Everyone could eat their fill and eat well. At this point, he had to mention that it was good for the country to be strong. In this era, there were still many homeless people on the streets. Longmen City had always been a place where men plowed and women weaved, so there were basically no beggars in Longmen City. He Province's Suzhou was different. The economic conditions here were more backward than Longmen City. Many people could still be seen huddled up in public places, such as the train station. In a slum in Suzhou, it was a 19-year-old girl with a black hat on her head. She was dressed in simple clothes, but they couldn't hide her perfect figure. She shuttled through the slums and soon arrived at a dirty place. Matching the address written on the slip of paper in her hand, Yunjian walked into a slum. Coming to the second floor of the slum, Yunjian saw the door open just as she reached the staircase. In a dilapidated room, a poor woman dressed in sackcloth was bending over to cook a simple meal in a pot made of firewood. You guessed it right. Her parents in her past life weren't dead. It was Ce back then who got someone to hide this matter, so she couldn't find out about it no matter how hard she tried. Chapter 2576, page 1/1. Most of the people in the slums lived a life of hunger and cold. Here, they would be satisfied if they were able to eat a full meal. Standing in the dilapidated house that was only 2 stories tall, Yunjian's eyes flashed coldly as she looked at the middle-aged woman who was dressed in sackcloth that was patched with rags. The woman walked around the back of the burning stove and pressed her hand on her waist. She slowly bent down and picked up a piece of firewood and stuffed it into the stove. Then, she walked back to her original spot and continued to stir-fry the rice with only a few pieces of vegetables. The house was old and dark. When people stepped on the floor, it would make creaking sounds. It gave people the illusion that they could step on air at any time. "Miss, make way, make way." Just as Yunjian stood outside the door and stared at the simple house that was not closed with a glint in her eyes, unable to move, an old lady's voice came from behind her. The old lady gently pushed Yunjian aside and rushed into the house before Yunjian. She said to the middle-aged woman who was stir-frying, "Ran, your daughter is fighting with someone. It's at Westgate Market. The adults couldn't stop them, even if they ran over. This girl, fighting with a man. Hurry up and go take a look." The middle-aged woman was different from Qin Yiru. Her face was thin and her hands were almost skinny. Her face was full of yellow spots. However, one could vaguely see that she was also a great beauty when she was young. The middle-aged woman's surname was Zhou and her name was Ran. Zhou Ran. When Zhou Ran heard the old lady's words, her hands froze. Pada, the old spoon she used to stir fry, fell to the ground. Annie Wong, please help me put out the fire. I'll go over right now, Zhou Ran said to the old lady. Then she walked out anxiously. On Zhou Ran's face, there was a sadness that couldn't be washed away. It was a kind of sadness that came from the depths of her soul. Zhou Ran quickly ran out of the house. But the moment she ran out, she inadvertently glanced at Yun Jian. Their eyes met. With just one glance, Zhou Ran stopped in her tracks. She stared at Yun Jian. She should have taken a step forward, but she couldn't. Ran, what are you doing? What are you going to do if your daughter gets taken advantage of if we're late? I don't know who this girl is looking for. I'll help you entertain her. Hurry up and go. The old lady who Zhou Ran called Annie Wong urged her. Zhou Ran took one last glance at Yun Jian and rushed out. 15 years. Yun Jian was kidnapped when she was 5 and entered an Han organization. Yun Jian was 19 this year, but she was actually 20. She could no longer remember how her parents in her past life who took care of her looked like when she gave birth to her. But when she met Zhou Ran's gaze just now, the blood in her body told her that she was her mother in her past life. There was no mistaking it. After Zhou Ran left, the old lady looked up and wanted to ask Yun Jian who she was looking for. But when the old lady looked up, Yun Jian was already gone. Westgate Market. Because Zhou Ran ran too fast, she almost fell down. Her hands were quick, and she supported herself on the ground to stand up. Her knees were heavily rubbed against the ground, but she didn't care about the pain in her knees and rushed to the Westgate Market. What did you say? Say it again. My sister will come back. And my little brother will come back too. Don't talk about my mom like that. My mom isn't a jinx. At the entrance of the market, a girl who was 7 meters tall and had short hair clenched her fists and scolded back while fighting with 4 or 5 boys. At first, the girl had the upper hand, but later on, 4 or 5 boys worked together to suppress the girl. This girl was also Zhou Ran's daughter. Her name was Yun Mu, and she was Yun Jian's biological sister in her previous life. She was only 2 years younger than Yun Jian's body in her previous life, which meant that she was only 1 year younger than Yun Jian's current body. She was 18 years old. When Yun Jian was kidnapped, Zhou Ran's mother-in-law forced Zhou Ran to have another child when Zhou Ran was heartbroken. Zhou Ran couldn't resist and gave birth to Yun Mu. When Zhou Ran's mother-in-law saw that Zhou Ran gave birth to another girl, she immediately forced Zhou Ran to have another child. In the end, she couldn't give birth to another child for several years. In the end, she finally gave birth to a boy. That boy was Yunju. However, when Yunju was 8 years old, he was kidnapped for no reason. Zhou Ran's mother-in-law cried, threw a tantrum, and forced Zhou Ran to divorce Yun Jian's father in her previous life. Yun Jian's father in her previous life, Yun Ni, refused. In the end, Zhou Ran's mother-in-law failed to commit suicide by taking sleeping pills. Only then did Yun Ni compromise and divorce his first wife. All these years, Yun Ni and Zhou Ran never gave up looking for Yun Jian and Xiao Yunju. At this moment, Yun Mu was being mocked by these boys, and she fought back by scolding and beating them. When Zhou Ran arrived, the boys were about to take turns to slap Yun Mu in public. No, Lian Yu is outspoken. Don't lower yourself to her level. If you want to hit me. Zhou Ran rushed over. Just as Zhou Ran rushed over, she suddenly felt a figure that was countless times faster than her flash past. In the next second, the figure suddenly appeared in front of the boys. A second before a boy in front of them was about to slap Yun Mu, the figure reached out and grabbed the boy's wrist. Then, the sound of a wrist bone breaking echoed throughout the room. Crack, crack. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Chapter 2577. The boy whose wrist was being pinched by Yun Jian suddenly let out an earth-shattering howl. My hand. Mine. Crack, crack. Accompanying the boy's scream was the sound of his wrist bones being broken one after another. Westgate Market was the most dilapidated market in the slums. Rather than calling it a market, It was more like a large group of old ladies or grandpas setting up mobile stalls to sell vegetables. There wasn't even a place to sell vegetables in the slums. They just spread out a white cloth on the ground and placed all kinds of vegetables on it. It was a simple way to start selling vegetables. Of course, the slums had no shortage of people. There were too many monks and too little gruel. There were many people and very few residences. At most, each family was given one room. Although Westgate Market was dilapidated, it was filled with people. Just now, when Yun Ran was fighting with a few boys, most people stood aside and watched the show. There were also some who tried to stop the fight, but in the end, it was to no avail. Yun Ran had the appearance of a boy since she was young. She was 7 meters tall and looked like a man. Although she was only 18 years old, she looked more mature than Yun Jian. From the side, Yun Ran looked like a fresh and handsome young man. Even the girls were elated when they saw her. These boys were from the same school as Yun Ran and had long treated her as a boy. Seeing that Yun Ran had seduced many girls in school, they hated Yun Ran very much. Just now, they bumped into Yun Ran, who was buying groceries for her mother. Knowing Yun Ran's family background, these boys began to kick up a fuss. Yun Ran was so angry that she started a fight with 4 or 5 boys. Unfortunately, Yun Ran was a girl. If it was a one-on-one fight, Yun Ran was still very strong. However, when it was 4 or 5 against her, she was naturally weaker. The boys all treated Yun Ran as a boy. Those who lost in a group fight would naturally be beaten up. Just now, when these boys were about to beat Yun Ran, Yun Jian appeared. However, not only did she directly grab the wrist of the first boy who wanted to slap Yun Ran, she also used brute force to break the bones in his wrist. His bones were fractured. Chengzhe, F***CK. Who is this girl? Get her! Get her! When a friend of the boy whose wrist had been broken by Yun Jian saw this, he shouted at the boy, as if he was completely enraged by Yun Jian's actions. The boys naturally couldn't take this lying down. They joined hands and rushed toward Yun Jian with clenched fists in front of the hundreds of passers-by around the Westgate vegetable market. UB*TCH. He actually dared to help Yunin. Her mother was a jinx. She had once lost her daughter, and now her son had been abducted. She was even chased out of the house by a man. You bastard, don't you know this is our territory? How dare you attack us? F***CK, your grandmother. The boys' curses were extremely unpleasant to the ears. The poorer the place, the worse the security, and the more gangsters on the streets. Suzhou was such a place. The reason why these boys were so arrogant was because they had someone backing them. However, when the boys came in front of Yun Jian and waved their fists at her, the surrounding onlookers thought that Yun Jian was in trouble this time. Yun Ying got up and wanted to help Yun Jian. For some reason, when Zhou Ran saw these people beating up Yun Jian, her heart burned with pain. She wanted to step forward and block the violence of these arrogant boys for Yun Jian. Yun Jian gave a side kick and directly raised her leg high to step on the leading boy. She opened her hands and directly grabbed the sleeves of the 2 boys behind him. With the strength of her hands, she flung the 2 boys more than 10 meters away. The last boy was so scared that he didn't dare to come forward. She just sneered and glanced at the last boy. Then, she bent down and stepped on the palm of the boy who had insulted Yun Yin and Zhou Ran with her other foot. Kacha, kacha. The sound of the knuckles' bones breaking clearly reached everyone's ears. Her method, just now, was straightforward and efficient, causing everyone to panic. Just when the surrounding people, who had never seen such a frightening scene before, were about to stop breathing, Yun Jian's cold voice sounded clearly, but it made people tremble with fear. No matter whose territory this used to be, now that I'm here, it's mine. Chapter 2578. Every sentence that Yun Jian uttered sounded like an oath, and the 5 fingers of the boy under her foot emitted cracking sounds. Every time he spoke, it sent chills down everyone's spines. It was as if a spirit from hell was about to appear. Yun Jian's face remained indifferent and expressionless. The black hat added a sense of mystery to her. Big sister. Big sister, I was wrong, big sister. I beg you to be magnanimous and let me go, big sister. The boy used his other hand to grab his wrist that was under Yun Jian's foot. His face was pale from the pain. His body trembled because of the pain and Yun Jian's ghostly words. The boy had completely thrown away his pride as he begged for Yun Jian's forgiveness. Yun Mu stood behind Yun Jian. She glanced at Yun Jian and pursed her lips. Then, she spoke to the boy under Yun Jian's foot. Bah, if you dare to speak ill of my mother in the future, I'll kill you even if I have to risk my life. Wu Song, you scum. As she spoke, Yin Mu clapped her palms together and cracked her knuckles. Her tone was as if she was going to kill the boy under Yun Jian's foot. Big sister. I won't dare anymore, big sister. The boy called Wu Song was a stark contrast to his previous domineering attitude. He kept begging for forgiveness. The moment Yun Jian released her foot, the boys supported each other and staggered away. Ha ha, coward. Yin Mu dug her nose. She did not look like a girl at all. What do you mean risk your life? Liang, you're already 18 years old. Don't do things that will make your mother worry. Be more sensible and obedient. Okay? Zhou Ran heaved a sigh of relief. She looked like she was really frightened. Mom, they were the ones who did it to me first. Yun Mu retorted indignantly. At this moment, Zhou Ran had already walked up to Yun Jian. She gulped and looked straight at Yun Jian. After 2 seconds of silence, she shook her head and said to Yun Jian, thank you so much for what you did just now. My house is simple and crude. Do you mind coming to my house for some tea? As soon as Zhou Ran finished speaking, Yun Jian stared at her. The corners of her beautiful and delicate face suddenly lifted into a smile. As soon as Zhou Ran finished speaking, Yun Jian replied without hesitation, okay. It wasn't that he didn't mind, but that he agreed. Zhou Ran hid the sadness in the corner of her eyes and dragged her daughter, Yun Jian, back home. She had to admit that when she saw Yun Jian just now, the child she lost 15 years ago came to her mind. Haha, that was ridiculous, wasn't it? Her child, Yun Jian, had been lost for 15 years. At that time, she was only 5 years old. How could she have found her way home? Our house is simple and crude. We don't have tea. This is freshly boiled water. Make do with it, don't mind it. Zhou Ran handed a cup of warm water to Yun Jian. Yun Jian took it but didn't say anything. Her eyes were fixed on Zhou Ran. What's wrong with me? Is there something on my face? Zhou Ran couldn't help but ask when she saw Yun Jian staring at her face. Yun Jian only shook her head slightly. Mom, Dad is here. Just as Zhou Ran finished speaking, Yin Mu rushed in excitedly from outside the door. Behind her was a middle-aged man in his 40s who was dressed in a business suit. This man was Yun Jian's biological father in her previous life, Yun and I. Chapter 2579. After Yin and I walked into the house, he glanced at Yun Jian, who was sitting in the room, and then said to Zhou Ran, do you have a guest? As he spoke, Yin and I did not avoid it. He took out a large stack of red 100 yuan from his briefcase and handed it to Zhou Ran. Ran, take the money. When Zhou Ran saw the money, tears fell again, but she still reached out with trembling hands to take the money from Yun and I. Compared to Zhou Ran and Yun Ran, Yun Ni's clothes were much better. That was because Yun and I was an old employee of a company in Suzhou, and his income was not low. The clothes he was wearing were distributed by the company, so naturally they were not too shabby. In fact, Yun's usual clothes were very simple and crude. Take this money and ask old Zhang to go out and find them. Don't be afraid. We still have a long life. We will definitely find the child. There is nothing money can't do. The child will come back one day. Yin and I put his hand on Zhou Ran's shoulder and said this. In the end, even his own voice was slightly hoarse. Yin and I wiped his tears fiercely and smiled. He turned to walk out and then said, then, take good care of the guest. If I don't go back, I will be discovered. Although Yin and I and Zhou Ran were divorced, he had been saving money for Zhou Ran. It had been 15 years since Zhou Ran took this money and begged people to find Yun Jian and Yun Zhu. For 15 years, They wore tattered and mended clothes and lived like beggars. Even food and clothing were problems, but they never gave up looking for their child. "Dad, be careful on the way back," Yin Lian said to Yin and I. "Yes." "Okay." Yin and I nodded. But just as Yin and I walked out and was about to leave, two figures suddenly appeared at the gate. The two figures were one old and one young. The old one was an old lady in her 50s or 60s. She was dressed in ordinary clothes. In this slum, she should be considered rich. Actually, they were just dressed like a well-off family. The one missing was a woman around 36 or 37 years old. She was also dressed gorgeously. As soon as the old lady appeared, she glared at Zhou Ran and scolded Zhou Ran. "Sure, you bitch. She has divorced for so many years, yet she is still pestering What are you doing with our family's money? What do you want to do?" The old lady was Yun Ni's mother. She was also the mother-in-law who tried to commit suicide by swallowing sleeping pills and forced Yun and I and Zhou Ran to divorce. "Leave yourself alone and live a good life. However, you have been harassing my and I all these years. Damned lowly maid. And I is going to marry one next month. You lowly servant. Mistress, go and die as soon as possible." As the old lady spoke, she pulled the 36 or 37-year-old woman standing beside her and scolded Zhou Ran. This 36 or 37-year-old woman was one who was going to marry Yun and I next month. Shintu Wan was an employee of the same company as Yun and I. However, her position was lower than Yun Ni's. Therefore, God liked her very much and forced Yun and I to marry her. Yun and I did not agree and delayed it for so many years. Mistresses have been causing trouble since ancient times. "Bitch, how dare you take my family's money after you are divorced? I will beat you to death." The old lady stared at the stack of money in Zhou Ran's hands and was so angry that her hair stood on end. She rushed over and wanted to grab Wen's hair and fight with her to snatch the money. However, just as the old lady's hand was about to land on Zhou Ran, a pair of beautiful hands grabbed the old lady's collar. Who are you?" "This is my family's business. You are an outsider. Get out of here." The old lady saw Yun Jian suddenly stand up, and she scolded Yun Jian. Just as Shintu Wan was looking at Zhou Ran smugly, and everyone thought that Zhou Ran would back down, Shintu Wan's expression changed. Yun Jian pointed at Zhou Ran in front of everyone and uttered a statement that sent a ripple of shock through the crowd with a straight face. "I am Yun Jian, her biological daughter who was separated from her 15 years ago. Chapter 2580. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. If we're talking about an outsider, you should be the outsider. Who do you think you are to strut around in my house?" Yun Jian grabbed the old lady's hand and uttered the words that were extremely calm to her expressionlessly. Once she spoke, Zhou Ran, who stood where she was with the stack of money, Yin Mu, who rushed up to stop the old lady when she was about to attack Zhou Ran, Shinwen, who carried a branded bag and was dressed to match Yun and I, as well as Yun and I and the old lady herself. Everyone present was completely stunned by Yun Jian's words. You. What did you say?" The first one to react was not Zhou Ran, but the old lady. At this time, the old lady stared with her pair of black eyes, and a look of horror flashed across her face. Jiana? You're Jiana." Zhou Ran stared at Yun Jian after she heard what she said. She stared at Yun Jian, her voice soft and her words heavy as she spoke with all her might. Yun and I was dumbfounded as well. The briefcase in his hand fell to the floor with a clatter. Didn't they say they were separated for 15 years? How could they find her? Shinto-wen had heard of Yun Ni's family background as well, so she exclaimed in disbelief. The old lady's face was terrifyingly dark as well. "Are you my elder sister? You're my Yun Jian Jiejia." Yun Mu was stunned. In the next second, she dashed to Yun Jian and threw herself into Yun Jian's arms. Sis. Yin Mu, who was 18 years old and 5 centimeters taller than Yun Jian, had short hair, and looked exactly like a boy. She cried with all her might, tears streaming down her cheeks despite not shedding a single tear for more than a decade. Yinmu was only 3 years old when Yunjian was separated from her. When her younger brother was kidnapped, Yuning was already in her teens. But Yunjian was no longer around, so she was the elder sister. From the day her parents divorced, Yunshin cut off the long hair that she loved the most for more than 10 years. She swore that she would protect her mother like a boy, be the pillar of the family. She wanted to protect her mother from being bullied, so she forced herself to live as a boy. After witnessing Yunjian's skills at the Westgate Market, Yunmu's face was full of envy. If she had such skills, she wouldn't have been bullied all the time. When she found out that Yunjian was her biological sister and recalled the way Yunjian had protected her, she burst into tears on the spot. She was also someone who had her elder sister protecting her. In response to the crowd's bewilderment, Yunjian spoke calmly. I am. Just because you say so? What if it wasn't? How can you prove that you're Yunjian, who was lost 15 years ago? When the old lady heard that Yunjian was her long-lost granddaughter, not only was she not agitated, she glanced at Yunjian instead. To the old lady, other than boys, everyone else had nothing to do with her. Before Yunjian came out of Zhou Ran's womb, the old lady was so nice to Zhou Ran that she looked like she was going to dig her heart out. When Yunjian was born naturally, and it was a girl, the old lady rushed home from the hospital in a huff and did not visit Zhou Ran again. When she found out about Yunjian's identity, the old lady was not surprised at all. Instead, she loathed her even more. She must be my Jian. From the first time I saw her, I knew she must be. I can feel it. She's my Jian. Zhou Ran shuddered as the stack of bills in her hands fell to the floor. She rushed over to hug Yunjian. Money was never as important as her child to Zhou Ran. Opening her mouth, Zhou Ran wanted to say something as happiness came too suddenly. She had thought about it countless times in her dream, but she could not bring herself to say it when she saw Yunjian. Can you call me Mom? Zhou Ran asked, looking up at Yunjian. Yunjian looked back at her. Just when Zhou Ran and everyone else thought that Yunjian would not say it, she pressed her red lips together and said expressionlessly, Mom. What Mom? Stay away from the Yun family from now on. You even took my son's money. So what if you found your daughter? Don't expect my enrich to raise your daughter for you. You're the woman who lost my eldest grandson. Find my eldest grandson if you have the guts. The old lady pounced to pick up the bills on the floor and started lecturing with clicks of her tongue. Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2581. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Old Madam was afraid that when Yunjian came back, Zhou Ran would ask her son for Yunjian's living expenses. She also hated Zhou Ran for letting her grandson, Yunju, whom she had painstakingly obtained, be abducted. Mom! Yin and I shouted when she heard old Madam's words. What's wrong? Did you rebel? And are you going to go against your mom for a woman who has nothing to do with you? Don't forget that you're going to marry Wenwen next month. Wenwen isn't she? Old Madam did not wait for Yun and I to finish her words. She picked up the 100 yuan that had slipped from Zhou Ran's hands and stuffed it into her arms, as if she was afraid that someone would snatch it away. She glared fiercely at Yunjian and Zhou Ran with her round eyes, as if she was afraid that Yunjian and Zhou Ran would snatch the 100 yuan from her arms. Auntie, I suggest that we let her do a DNA test to know if she's Ni's daughter. After all, Anai is already a big shot in our company. We must always be on our guard. Shun Tuan walked to Old Madam's side and held her hand as if she was following Old Madam's words. You're still calling me Annie. You and I are going to get married next month. Call me Mom. Old Madam's attitude towards Shun Tuan was completely different from Zhou Ran's. She patted the back of Shun Tuan's hand affectionately and said, after that, she looked at Zhou Ran with deep hatred and said, Did you hear that? I want you to bring this person who claims to be your daughter to do a DNA test. Also, Don't even think about getting a single cent from my family. Bang! Just after old madam finished speaking, Yin and I slammed her fist on a wooden table. Quong, quong, quong. The wooden table made a huge shaking sound. Following the shaking sound, Yin and I roared at old madam angrily and hoarsely. Enough. Do you think I can't see through my own daughter? Do we need to do a DNA test to see if she's my daughter? I never agreed to the wedding next month. Get married yourself. Other than Ran, I won't marry anyone else in my life. Get out. Get out. Get out of here. Yin and I was usually an honest person, and Shuntuan was also the reason why she liked Yin and I. If she married Yin and I in the future, with Ni's temper, Yin Ni's temper, she would be in charge of Yin Ni's way. Yin and I, old madam, and was, old Yin was old with the, translation, was translation old? Was translation? Translation? How? You, damned woman, remember this. Don't think that I don't know how much money my and I borrowed from you. Should that money with Yun, should that amount, it at least money. If you don't return the money, I'll sue you in court tomorrow. Old madam was so frightened by Yun Ni's scolding that she took a few steps back. Then, she looked at Zhou Ran and screamed like a crazy woman. 100,000? After old madam screamed like a lunatic, Yun Jian looked up. Her eyes were cold, and her lips moved slightly as she spoke. That's right, 100,000. Your mother won't be able to save this amount of money, even if she works her whole life. You're still pestering an eye, even after you're divorced. Your mother is the mistress. Old madam glared at Yin and I. Just when old madam thought that Yin Jian would refute her verbally or be surprised that Zhou Ran owed her family so much money, Yin Jian's lips moved slightly. Oh, 100,000. In the next moment, everyone saw Yun Jian walk to the side and take the travel bag that she had left at the door. Then, in front of everyone, she unzipped the travel bag and turned it upside down. Everyone saw a large stack of US dollar bills falling out of the travel bag. At that moment, Yun Jian squatted down and picked up a stack of US dollar bills from the ground. She waved it at old madam and said expressionlessly, "This stack of 10,000 US dollars is equivalent to more than 60,000 renminbi. I have 500,000 US dollars here, which is more than 3 million renminbi. Old woman, is that enough to pay you back?" Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2582. The stacks of banknotes were dug out from the travel bag. Although they weren't red Grandpa Mao banknotes, none of the people present had ever seen so much money in their lives. At this moment, they were all shocked and stood rooted to the ground. The old lady's eyes widened. Her pair of black eyes darted left and right, back and forth. Her face looked as if she had eaten feces and instantly turned as white as ice. Enough, enough, enough. The old lady looked as if she had been possessed by a ghost as she walked towards Yun Jian. Her eyes were filled with the pile of US dollar bills in front of Yun Jian. Just as the old lady was about to reach Yun Jian in an obsessive manner, a cold smile appeared on Yun Jian's face. Yun Jian's lips curved slightly. Unknowingly, a lighter appeared in Yun Jian's hand. This scene made Shinta 1, the old lady, Yun and I, Zhou Ran, and Yun Ran's eyes widen in shock. What are you doing? What are you doing, child? No. The old lady rushed over like a lunge. However, Yun Jian was one step ahead of her. In front of the old lady, she burned the pile of US dollar bills to ashes. Just as the few people present held their breaths in shock and looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief, Yun Jian's cold voice suddenly rang out. Unfortunately, I won't give you a single cent of this money, even if I burn it to ashes. So much money was burned to ashes by Yun Jian in an instant. The old lady and Shuntu Wen's expressions were the most interesting. It was equivalent to 3 million yuan in banknotes. It was money that they could never earn in their lifetime. Yet it was burned by Yun Jian just like that. Oh, the money. The old lady was so angry at Yun Jian that her eyes rolled back, and she fainted in front of everyone present. Sister, you're so domineering. Yin Lian clapped her hands and looked at Yun Jian with admiration. But sister, how did you get so much money? Yin Ran asked the question that Zhou Ran, Yin Ni, and Shintawan wanted to know. The money belonged to Yun Jian, and Yun Jian had been separated from them for 15 years. Therefore, Zhou Ran and Yun and I would not say anything about Yun Jian burning the money. After all, she was her biological mother. Yun and I had already helped the old lady up and rushed to the hospital. Shintawan also left. After Yun and I helped the old lady to the hospital and Shintawan left, Yun Jian said calmly, "It's fake." Puff. Sis, you still have the habit of carrying fake money with you. That old woman was scared out of her wits just now. I've long found her an eyesore. How infuriating. She deserves to be angered to death. Yin Lian laughed. Lian, I'm making dinner. Take Jian out for a walk. Zhou Ran looked at Yun Jian excitedly. I know, Mom. We'll go out for a walk. We'll be back soon. Yin Lian knew that Zhou Ran was going to make something delicious for dinner, so she pulled Yun Jian out excitedly. The residences in the slums were close to each other, and the surroundings were messy. It was simple and ordinary, and some places even emitted an awful stench. Yin Ming took Yun Jian away from the slum and went to a school that was equally shabby but had a better environment in comparison. Sis, this is the high school I'm studying in. I'll take you there to take a look. It's Saturday today, and there's no one in school. Yin Ran addressed Yun Jian as her sister smoothly, hooking her arm around Yun Jian's as they walked into the shabby school. Right, sis? What have you been doing all these years outside? Yin Ran pulled Yun Jian through the school gate excitedly. She suddenly thought of something and turned to ask Yun Jian. Yun Jian's eyes glinted at Yun Ran's question. Under Yun Ran's expectant gaze, she confessed, I am. Chapter 2583. Page 1/1. Yun Zheng, it's you. Before Yun Jian could say anything, a male voice came from the entrance of the tiny high school. Upon hearing this, Yun Jian glanced sideways. Then he saw 3 groups of more than a dozen boys walking over with basketballs. The boy who spoke was the one at the front of the group. He had short hair and was wearing a basketball jersey. He was about 185 meters tall. He wasn't the most good-looking among the group of boys, but he was the type that was very pleasing to the eye. Following behind these boys was a group of infatuated girls. Even if this high school wasn't famous, there would always be good-looking boys and girls. This was inevitable. Zhou Qiong, are you guys practicing basketball here again? Yining looked at the boy and asked. Yun Jian could clearly see Yun Yao blushing slightly when she asked Zhou Qiong a question. Yes. Do you want to come along? Zhou Ming seemed to treat Yun Mu as a boy. He walked over and placed his hand on Yun Mu's shoulder in a very natural manner before asking. As he spoke, Zhou Qiong saw Yun Jian. He nodded and smiled at her before asking Yun Jian, Who is this? I've never seen him before. That's her elder sister. Yun Mu rushed to reply. As she spoke, Yun Mu's face was filled with happiness. Your sister? Your sister is back? Haha, I really wish you all the best. The boy named Zhou Qiong obviously knew about Yun Luo's family background, so he laughed and said, Hello, Sister Yun Jian. My name is Zhou Qiong. I'm a member of our school's basketball team. Zhou Qiong took the initiative to greet Yun Jian. Hello. For the first time, Yun Jian responded. Zhou Qiong, it's time to continue practicing basketball. It won't be long before we have to compete. One of Zhou Qiong's brothers shouted at Zhou Qiong from afar. Okay, Zhou Qiong replied. She then said something to Yun Ran and Yun Jian before walking over. Yun Jian accompanied Yun Yao to watch Zhou Qiong and the others practice basketball for half an hour. At 6 o'clock, the sun was about to set. Zhou Qiong wiped the sweat off his face with his clothes and walked to Yun Yao's side. Yun Mu was holding a kettle in her hand, knowing that she had prepared it for Zhou Qiong. Zhou Qiong, I prepared some water for you. Just as Zhou Qiong was about to reach Yun Yao, a girl suddenly spoke up. As she spoke, the girl handed her water bottle to Zhou Qiong. Yin Han, why are you fighting with me over the water? You're not a girl. What if people see you handing water to Zhou Qiong and think you're a girl? The girl glanced at Yin Mu with disdain before passing her water to Zhou Qiong before Yunmu could. No need, I'm not thirsty. Seeing this, Zhou Qiong smiled awkwardly. Actually, it was not that Zhou Qiong was not thirsty, but he did not want to make things difficult for Yun Yao. All right. Hearing this, the girl put the water back. The girl's name is Wan Yu. Bro, I'm here. Guess what I found for you? At this moment, a boy walked over mysteriously with a pile of things. What's that? Why are you acting so mysterious? Someone sat on the steps and asked while drinking water. It's a gun. One of my brothers stole it from home. I heard that it was used during the war in the last century. The parts are all scattered now, but you can admire it. The boy walked to the front of the crowd and showed the parts in his arms to everyone. Seeing this, everyone surrounded him. When these parts are put together, it's the gun that's often shown in movies. Wan Yu, the girl who was fighting with Yun, ran over the water bottle, looked at the parts in the boy's arms in amazement. Yeah, just by looking at these parts, I can't tell what kind of gun it is. The boy holding the parts nodded when he heard Wan Yu's words. Just as everyone was looking curiously at the parts in the boy's arms, a beautiful girl's voice suddenly sounded. The meaning of her words was like a thunderbolt that struck everyone on the spot and made them stare fiercely. This is a Type 64 handgun, the first handgun developed by Country Z. It was designed in 1964 and produced in 1980. It's a more ideal weapon for individual self-defense. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2584. Yun Jian's voice reverberated throughout the hall. Everyone was stunned when they heard what she said. Everyone slowly turned their heads to look at Yun Jian. Their eyes were filled with shock. You know guns? The boy who was holding a pile of gun parts for everyone to admire couldn't hide his shock when he heard Yun Jian's words. Wan Yu, the girl who had fought with Yun Jian to pass water to Zhou Qiong and said that Yun Jian was a man. She also looked at Yun Jian in shock. The girls present were all good-looking. Yun Jian was the most outstanding among them. Everyone was a high school student who had never been out of the city and didn't have many distracting thoughts. Therefore, no one paid too much attention to Yun Jian. Although the people here were poor, they hadn't gone out into society. Therefore, everyone's thoughts were relatively simple. I'm interested, Yun Jian said under everyone's gaze. Interested? Even if you're interested, your family probably doesn't have the funds to let people read about guns, right? Wan Yu interrupted Yun Jian as though she was eager to interrupt Yun Jian. As soon as she finished speaking, Wan Yu immediately turned to look at the boy holding all kinds of gun parts and added, Mu Zishi, other than loving to play basketball, I often see you guys reading books about guns after class, right? She's a girl. Her understanding of guns definitely isn't as profound as yours. Moreover, Mu Zishi, the gun you brought has already been turned to parts. How could she possibly recognize it? Wan Yu didn't hate Yun Jian to the bone at first sight. She also didn't have a reason to hate Yun Jian. However, girls generally held hostility towards women who weren't their friends. At least in their words, they wanted to gain an absolute advantage. Wan Yu was like that. Wan Yu, she's Yun Jian's older sister. Zhou Qiong awkwardly reminded Wan Yu, who thought she was very smart. Hearing this, Wan Yu's face stiffened. That's right, she actually forgot that Yun Jian didn't grow up with Yun Mu. Yun Han's elder sister had been separated when she was 5 years old. This was something that everyone knew. If that was the case, then what she said just now would not be valid. Now, no one knew where Yun Jian had gone and what she had done the past 15 years. Cough. We only know the basics. Later, my brother will come over. My brother has a deep understanding of handguns. He can answer whatever we don't understand. I got this gun from one of my buddies. I want to show it to everyone first. Mu Zishi broke the awkward atmosphere as he opened his mouth and laughed. Actually, no one believed what Yun Jian said. After all, she was a girl. Would she really be interested in guns? But other people were not like Wan Yu, speaking so firmly. Yun Jian naturally saw it, but she didn't say anything else after saying that. Obviously, she didn't care about what others thought. Sister, I believe you. Yun Mu suddenly leaned over to Yun Jian's ear and whispered. Yun Jian heard this and looked up at Yun Mu. The moment Yun Jian looked over, Yun Mu winked at Yun Jian. Hey, my brother is here. Mu Zi, she saw a boy walking over from not far away and stood up excitedly. Go Zi, hurry up and come over here. What kind of gun is this? Tell us. Mu Zishi saw his buddy and raised the pile of gun parts in his hand from afar. Hearing this, the people around them pricked up their ears as if they were waiting to watch a show. Just as everyone pricked up their ears to listen, Mu Zishi's buddy blushed as he was stared at by so many people. He touched his mouth and then said, I'm sorry. He touched his hand and said, I heard that this gun was taken from a foreigner. As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Yun Jian suspiciously. If it was taken from a foreigner, then it definitely wasn't a gun from country Z. It definitely wasn't a Type 64 pistol either. It had to be a foreigner's gun. It was named after a foreigner. Just as everyone was sizing up Yun Jian, Mu Zishi's buddy continued and said something that stunned everyone. The model of the pistol is a Type 64. It's a handgun developed by Country Z. It's a type of self-defense weapon. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2585. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. When everyone heard Brother Muzishi say that the handgun was taken from a foreigner, they mistakenly thought that the handgun was made by a foreigner. That meant that the handgun was definitely made by a foreigner and would not be named after the model name of the handgun in Country Z. What Mu Zishi said after that was like a huge slap to everyone who doubted Yun Jian. A resounding slap to their faces. What? Dog, what did you say? Repeat it for us. Mu Zishi heard his brother's words, and his face suddenly changed. He looked at his brother and said loudly. Mu Zishi's heart was filled with a huge question mark. He frowned slightly and swept his eyes across the scene. He was stunned for a moment before he said, I said that the model of this gun is a Type 64 handgun that was developed by Country Z? What? Did I say something wrong? Just as Mu Zishi's brother finished speaking, Mu Zishi had already jumped down the stairs and walked towards Yun Jian. At the same time, Mu Zishi lightly spoke to Yun Jian. F***CK. You really know guns. Awesome. Just look at these scattered parts, and you can recognize the model of the gun. I almost thought that you were in the military. After Mu Zishi's words, his brother finally understood what was going on. Mu Zishi's brother stared at Yun Jian in shock as well, and spoke to her in front of the stunned crowd. Brother Yun, you're the one who's being bullied. I have studied guns for so many years. This gun is scattered, and I can't even recognize the model of the gun at a glance. May I ask, how did you recognize the gun at a glance? Mu Zishi's brother was called Jing Chung. He was a very casual person. Usually, other than understanding his own hobbies, he didn't like to talk to others. If he was asked a question in public, he would blush. Now that he heard Mu Zishi's words and knew that Yun Jian was able to recognize the type of pistol with just one glance, Jing Cheng's interest was immediately piqued. He rushed to Yun Jian as if he had picked up a bargain. In fact, it was not only the surrounding people who wanted to know the answer to this question. Even Yun Mu was filled with doubts. What had happened to her sister, Yun Jian, in the past 15 years? She guessed it by chance, right? Wan Yuyu still didn't believe it. She glanced at Yun Jian and was silent for 2 seconds before speaking. Sure enough, after Wan Yuyu said this, Yun Jian said, It's just a feeling. Did he recognize the model of this pistol just by feeling? To put it nicely, he recognized the pistol based on his intuition. But to put it bluntly, wasn't it just a coincidence? Wan Yuyu spread her hands and made an expression that said, Look, that's the truth. Wan Yuyu lived in the poorest slums of Suzhou. She was also a frog at the bottom of a well. She didn't know much about pistols and naturally didn't know that there were many types of pistols in the world. For someone who didn't know much about pistols, it was simply a fantasy if you blindly guessed the type of pistol. If someone who didn't know much about pistols guessed it one day, then congratulations, you could immediately buy a lottery ticket and win the 5 million grand prize. Coincidence? You don't know how many types of pistols there are in the world. Jing Chung argued with Wan Yuyu. Then, when Wan Yuyu's expression changed, he asked Yun Jian again, Then how did you recognize the model of the pistol by feeling? Can you teach me? When Jing Chang spoke to Yun Jin again, he had already changed the way he addressed her from you to you. Who knew that after Jing Chang asked this, Yun Jin would lightly pat her pants that were stained with dust from sitting on the steps and pull Yun Mu down the steps. Everyone thought that Yun Jin didn't plan to pay attention to Jing Chang and was about to leave. But who knew that when Yun Jin walked halfway, she suddenly turned around. Her beautiful eyes flashed sharply, but she only left Jing Chang with a sentence that everyone present didn't quite understand, but they trembled from head to toe. One day, when you have no choice but to hold all kinds of guns in your hands and fight enemies, you will naturally be able to recognize the type of gun by feeling. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2586. Zhou Ran's sister-in-law came to visit. Yun Jin's words were very subtle, giving people a feeling that they didn't fully understand what she meant. However, if one thought about it carefully, what she said was not difficult to understand. The knowledge learned from books was far less clear than the knowledge gained from an hour of actual operation. For example, if you were to learn English from books for 6 years in primary school, 3 years in middle school, and 3 years in high school, a total of 12 years of learning, it would definitely be better than throwing you into an English-speaking country for 2 years. All of Jing Cheng's knowledge of firearms came from books. This kind of knowledge could at best be regarded as rote memorization. What Yun Jin meant was the actual operation. When you are able to operate all kinds of firearms with ease, even if you don't know what kind of firearm it is, or even if you don't know it yourself, it will be deeply imprinted in your mind and can't be erased. Let's go home for dinner. Everyone around them was stupefied by Yun Jin's words. It was not only because Yun Jin was able to say something so profound, but more importantly, it was because Yun Jin was able to say something like that. Did that mean that she was very knowledgeable about firearms, just as she said? She had once had to hold all kinds of guns in her hands to fight the enemy? Country Z was a country that prohibited the use of firearms, and Yun Jin was Yun Mu's biological sister who had been separated from her for 15 years. If you compare this, in that case, where had Yun Ying's sister, Yun Jin, gone all these years? The hearts of everyone present were filled with doubt, and they urgently wanted to know the answer. However, by the time everyone wanted to ask, Yun Jin had already walked far away with Yun Mu. Zhou Qiong, see you tomorrow. After Yun Yao and Yun Jin were more than 10 meters away from the crowd, she turned around and waved at Zhou Qiong. See you tomorrow. Zhou Qiong nodded at Yun Lian. Her short black hair was very dazzling under the setting sun. Even though Yun Mu had thousands of questions that she wanted to ask Yun Jin personally, she still chose to ask after dinner. After returning home, Zhou Ran had already prepared a very sumptuous dinner. A small fish the size of a hand, a plate of homegrown vegetables, a nest of pickled meat and bamboo shoots, and a plate of glutinous rice intestines stir-fried with meat. The last 2 dishes were produced during the new year. Because Zhou Ran's family raised pigs, she was given some pork. She developed the pork and even made glutinous rice sausages. If it was in the past, this amount of food was enough to last Zhou Ran and Yun Yao for 5 days. But today, when Yun Jin came back, Zhou Ran compared the dinner she made in the evening with the previous one. It was much more sumptuous. Jinner, I don't know what kind of life you've been living all these years outside. I'm sorry. Zhou Ran's tears fell again as she spoke. It's okay. I've been living well all these years. Yun Jin pressed her lips together and pulled a napkin from the table to pass it to Zhou Ran. Zhou Ran quickly wiped her tears away. Eat. This dish isn't particularly good, but try it. Try Mom's cooking. Zhou Ran stood up to take some food for Yun Jin. Yun Jin ate everything that Zhou Ran took for her. To Yun Jin, she did not have a strong relationship with Zhou Ran since they had not known each other for long. However, Zhou Ran was someone Yun Jin cherished greatly. Clang, clang, clang. While Yun Jin and Zhou Ran were in the middle of their meal, a woman in her 40s rushed in. The woman was holding a metal pot. When she saw Zhou Ran, she placed the pot in front of Zhou Ran and started yelling. Well done, Zhou Ran. You're really something. How dare you send my mom to the hospital after she fainted from anger? Do you have conscience? None of us have ever mistreated you when we were in the Yun family. How shameless can you be? My brother has already shown off to you. You're still clinging to him. Chapter 2587. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The person who came was none other than Yun Ni's younger sister, Yun Shan. Yun Shan was Yun Ni's younger sister and Zhou Ran's sister-in-law. In a way, she was still Yun Jian's aunt in name. When Yun Ni and Yun Shan's mother, the old lady, was sent to the hospital because of Yun Jian, Yun Shan rushed over with the iron pot in her house. Yun Shan was furious. She heard that her mother was sent to the hospital because of Zhou Ran's eldest daughter. She was preparing dinner when she heard that Zhou Ran's eldest daughter had returned and was sent to the hospital because of Zhou Ran's eldest daughter. What? That old lady was sent to the hospital because of her own anger. What does it have to do with my mother? Also, when my mother was in your house, she suffered so much because of you. You should be the ones who are shameless. My father and mother were in love with each other. Why did you have to force them to divorce? Old woman. Yun Shan was not one to be scolded. She looked at Yun Shan, who had rushed into her house, and retorted rudely. You. Yun Shan was angered by Yun Shan and took a deep breath. Just as she was about to speak, Zhou Ran pulled Yun Shan over and said to Yun Shan, "You know very well what kind of life I've been living in the Yun family. I, Zhou Ran, don't owe you anything. It's not your turn to interfere in the matter between me and Ni, you little sister-in-law. Yin and I is still unmarried, and so am I, Zhou Ran. Even if we are divorced, which law forbids us from remarrying. This is my house now. If you don't leave, don't blame me for being merciless. I will sue you for trespassing." Zhou Ran was different from Qin Yuru. Zhou Ran could endure the Yun family's anger because she had married into the Yun family and treated them as her own family. But now that the Yun family had done things so ruthlessly, Zhou Ran naturally couldn't stick to their cold butts. You, Zhou Ran, you. Yun Shan was speechless. This was a slum, and the people who lived there were not very rich. Other than the slums in Suzhou, the housing prices in other places were very high. Therefore, both Zhou Ran and the Yun family lived in the slums, which were very close to each other. They couldn't afford to move to another place. Therefore, whether it was the classmates that Yun Jian had met at Yuning High School, the Yun family, or old Madame Yun, they all lived near the slums. Yun Shan was just about to speak when she heard a sudden clamor outside. Then, a series of bang 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 sounds suddenly rang out. Upon hearing this, Yun Jian's narrowed eyes flashed sharply. What happened? Yin Lian was shocked. The law and order in Suzhou was not stable. Z country prohibited the use of handguns, but there were still many gangsters who carried guns. Compared to Longmen City, the gangsters in Suzhou were more cunning. Therefore, the occasional gunshot was not surprising. Yin Shan, your Xiangzi is being hunted down. I told you that nothing good will come out of your Xiangzi hanging out with people from the black market every day. Go down and take a look. The residents near the slums knew each other. One of them rushed to Zhou Ran's house and spoke to Yin Shan. Yin Shan's face paled at the words, and she ran down the stairs quickly. The resident obviously knew many people. She glanced at Zhou Ran and hesitated for 2 seconds before speaking to Zhou Ran anxiously. Although you and Yin and I are divorced, I could see that both of you love each other as much as before. I saw Yin and I and Xiangzi together outside just now. They're probably being hunted down together now. Zhou Ran stumbled down the stairs as soon as she finished speaking. Yin Lian and Yun Jian followed closely behind her. After going around 2 junctions, they were getting closer to the sound of gunshots. Yin Jian saw Zhou Qiang, Wan Yuyu, Mu Zixi, and Jing Cheng, whom she had met in school earlier. They were standing there after hearing the gunshots. They were still some distance away from where the gunshots were, but when they heard the noise, all the neighbors came out to see what was going on. It was common knowledge that Yun Shan's husband was a gangster. What's going on? Zhou Ran rushed over to ask. Judging by the sound, it's not good. I heard that Yin and I sent her mother to the hospital and came back. How did this happen? An old man spoke anxiously as he propped himself on the ground with his walking stick. What should we do then? Zhou Ran's face was pale. I've already asked someone to contact the police station. I just don't know if we can make it in time, someone said. Just as the words were spoken, the group saw a slender silhouette walking past them. Yun Jian was walking around the crowd toward the source of the gunshots. Jianna, what are you doing? Zhou Ran hurried over to stop her. Sis, I know you're worried, and so am I. But there's nothing we can do if we go. Yun Lian spoke up as well, her panicked expression betraying her. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian was frightened by the incident, they saw Yun Jian pulling out a shiny silver pistol from her waist case right in front of Zhou Qiang, Wan Yuyu, Mu Zixi, Jing Cheng, and everyone else. Everyone was stunned. Yun Jian glanced sideways at Yun Zhan with a red smirk on her face as she uttered something that caused an uproar and stupefied everyone present. Didn't you want to know what I've been doing all these years outside? I'll tell you with my actions now. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2588. As soon as Yun Jian finished speaking, she stood in front of everyone. Her slender, tall, and flawless figure deeply attracted everyone's attention. Coupled with the words that just came out of her red lips, Yun Lian, who was standing in the front and looking at Yun Jian, suddenly widened her dark eyes. It was a shiny silver Browning pistol. The pistol was very light and made people want to reach out and touch it just by looking at it. At least, Jing Cheng, who loved guns very much, widened his eyes. He was shocked that Yun Jian had a pistol and envied the pistol in Yun Jian's hand. That's a Browning pistol made in Country M. It's very popular on the market and one of the most difficult pistols to get. Just when everyone was shocked that Yun Jian had a gun in her hand, whether it was Wan Yuyu, Mu Zixi, Zhou Qiang, Yun Ran, Yun Lian, Zhou Ran, or Yun Jian's nominal aunt, Yun Shan, all of them widened their eyes after Yun Jian finished speaking. Jing Cheng's surprised and stunned words were also heard. At the end of his words, everyone was stunned again by Jing Cheng's words. They were not only shocked by Yun Jian's words, but also shocked by the gun in Yun Jian's hand. They even questioned what kind of person Yun Jian was. She could actually get the most popular pistol on the market, which was extremely difficult to get. She was not an ordinary person. She could do it. He was indeed a young man who loved guns to the bone. Even at this time, he still remembered the model of the gun. Yun Jian smiled. It had been less than 20 seconds since Yun Jian had taken out the silver pistol and said those words. After hearing Jing Cheng's words, she took out another Beretta 92F pistol from the waist case on her other side, which was so hidden that no one could see it, and threw it at Jing Cheng. Yun Jian suddenly threw a gun at him. Jing Cheng didn't know why. He hurriedly caught the Beretta 92F that Yun Jian threw at him. When he raised his head, Yun Jian had already disappeared. He only left behind a sentence that made Jing Cheng's blood boil. Protect my sister and mother for me, and I'll give you this pistol. The group of people who were left behind blinked their eyes fiercely. Their hearts were filled with complex emotions. Especially Wan Yuyu, her expression changed the most. Yun Lian lived like a boy and even fought with boys. She did not act like a girl at all. This was the reason why Wan Yuyu had always mocked Yun Mu. When he first met Yun Jian, he thought that as Yun Jian's older sister, Yun Jian should be gentle and virtuous. But she actually carried such a dangerous handgun with her at all times. The girls in the Yun family were each more ferocious than the other. Were they all the same as the boys? No, they were even more manly than the boys. In an alley at the entrance of a slum, Yun Shan's husband, Xiang Zi, dragged Yun and I into an alley to hide. The two of them hid behind a pile of garbage that was 5 meters high at the entrance of the alley. Yun Shan's husband, Xiang Zi, was called Wenjing Xiang. Unlike his wife, Yun Shan, Wenjing Xiang was a very upright person. In his early years, because his family was poor and could not afford to eat, they could not even afford to raise the children at home. Therefore, when Zheng Xiang joined the black market gang in Suzhou, After rolling around in the gang for a few years, Wen Zhengxiang was now a well-known figure in the Suzhou gang. However, because of this, he had made many enemies. This time, the person who suddenly chased after him was his mortal enemy. Yin and I, you go first. Go around the back of the alley. Run. When Zhengxiang saw that the road was blocked, he pushed Yin and I and shouted, "Ha ha! Run? No one can run away." As soon as Wen Zhengxiang finished speaking, 4 or 5 pistols were aimed at Wen Zhengxiang and Yin and I from different angles. A man with a big X scar on his face appeared in front of Wen Zhengxiang and Yin and I. He smiled wickedly. "Wen Zhengxiang, I caught you this time. You're dead. You'll die on your own. You even dragged a relative down with you. How nice." The man glared at Yin and I fiercely, waved his hand at his subordinates, and shouted, "Fire!" Beat the 2 of them into a hornet's nest. Bang, 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 bang. As soon as the man finished speaking, a series of gunshots rang out. The man's 5 subordinates, who were holding guns and pointing the muzzles at Wen Zhengxiang and Yin and I, were shot in the wrist one after another along with the gunshots. The guns fell to the ground. The man's subordinates held their wrists and shouted. When the man saw this, he was so scared that his face turned pale. He quickly turned his head to look. 10 meters away, he saw a young girl standing on the second-floor balcony of a house. She calmly put away her pistol and looked at him coldly. Then, she said something that would send people to hell. "Who dares to touch a strand of my father's hair? I'll blow your head off." Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 2589. The man's expression changed drastically when he saw his 5 subordinates being shot by Yun Jian in the wrists that were holding their guns. While the man was still in shock, Yun Jian was already holding onto the second-floor balcony that was more than 10 meters away. She jumped from the simple balcony that was 3 meters above the ground to the flat ground easily. Then, her long ponytail swayed at her waist as she walked over like the wind. Yun Jian was dressed in a black top and loose black pants. She was holding a shiny silver pistol in her hand. She looked like the queen of the night, showing off her graceful figure in the evening that was about to descend a mountain. "Jian Jianer." Yun and I stared at the silver pistol in Yun Jian's hand in disbelief. His expression was terrifyingly dark. "Yin and I, this is the daughter you brought home yourself?" When Zhengxiang's eyes widened in disbelief as he stared blankly. As a member of the black market, how could he not know about such an aura? Yun Ni's daughter that had been lost for 15 years. In the 15 years that they were separated, could it be that? F***CK. Consider yourselves lucky. It won't be this easy next time. The man with the huge X scar on his face turned and ran after he said that when he realized that the timing was not right. When his subordinates saw this, they also chased after the man with the big X scar on his face. Wen Zhengxiang and Yun and I breathed a huge sigh of relief when they saw this. "Yun and I, your daughter is amazing. If it wasn't for your daughter..." When Zhengxiang held his arm that was grazed just now and told Yun and I. However, just as he said that, bang, a gunshot that startled the birds on the telephone pole and sent them flying away suddenly rang out when Zhengxiang was halfway through his conversation with Yun and I. On the other side, the scarred man, who had a big X on his face, was about to run away when a bright bullet pierced through the middle of his head. The scarred man's body swayed and his footsteps stopped. In the next second, he fell to the ground with a plop and no longer moved. F***CK. F***CK. Yin and I, your daughter, your daughter. Seeing this, when Zhengxiang stood up in shock, he covered the abrasions on his arm and ran to where the scarred man had fallen. In this era, it was illegal to kill people. But generally, in a place like Suzhou, there were more hooligans and gangsters. If you had someone to protect you, it would be fine. It was common for people to die in the black market. However, Wen Zhengxiang did not expect that Yun Jian would actually kill someone. She was just a teenage girl. What had he encountered in the past? After killing someone, he didn't even bat an eyelid. Bring your leader's body back. Tell your gang members that if they want revenge, come to 309 Jindankyo Road in the slums and look for me, Yun Jian. Without waiting for Wan Jingxiang to speak, Yun Jian put away her gun and coldly spoke to the dead man's subordinates. When the man's subordinates heard this, they were stunned. In the next second, they lifted the man's body and left as if they were fleeing. It was only when everything quieted down that when Zheng Xiang looked at Yun Jian, scratching his head throbbing, he looked at her and said, "I'm sorry. How could you kill him? You'll have to go to jail." Yun and I also walked over, trembling all over. She was trembling because Yun and I was afraid that her daughter would be forcibly arrested and sent to jail as soon as she came back. It was all his fault. It was all because he, as a father, did not do his duty and did not educate her properly. Yun and I also scratched her head. Just as Yun and I, and when Zheng Xiang looked anxious, Yun Jian suddenly spoke. Her words were still as cold as ice. "You have to dig up the roots to cut the weeds. He deserved to die. M." Chapter 2590. What kind of environment made Yun Jian the person she was today? Yun and I, and when Zheng Xiang didn't understand. The two of them hurriedly brought Yun Jian back to Yun Yi's house. The neighbors who were standing at the intersection and didn't dare to go forward when they heard the gunshots had already gone home. Only Yun Ran's classmates, Zhou Qiang, Wan Yuyu, Mu Zixi, Jing Cheng, and Yun Shan, followed in. "Dad, what's wrong with you guys being so flustered? Also, you guys should be fine just now, right? Dad, did sister save you guys? Sister is also a gangster like uncle-in-law, right?" Yin Ran looked at Yin and I and asked curiously. As she spoke, she looked up at her uncle-in-law, Wen Zhengxiang. "Li and let your classmates go home first." Yin and I glanced at Zhou Qiang and the others and said to Yun Ran in a panic, "Uncle, we won't say anything. We just want to hear how Yun Ran's sister saved you and uncle-in-law just now." Wan Yu said after Yin and I finished speaking. This was an interesting matter. Of course, everyone wanted to know what had happened as soon as possible. Therefore, none of them were willing to leave. "You guys, nothing happened just now. Nothing happened," Yin and I said against her will. As she spoke, Yin and I pressed her fingers to her forehead and revealed a helpless expression. Once this kind of thing happened, the gang that the man who was shot by Yun Jian belonged to would definitely come looking for them. Just now, that man did want to kill Yin and I and Wen Zhengxiang, but that man definitely had someone protecting him. Now, Yun Jian killed him instead. "Yin and I, come here." Wen Zhengxiang waved at Yin and I. When Yin and I came over, Wen Zhengxiang leaned over and whispered in Yun Yi's ear, "I'll go to our gang and beg our boss to see if he can save your daughter." As he spoke, Wen Zhengxiang ran out of the door. "Xiang Zi, please." Yun and I shouted at Wen Zhengxiang. Both of them thought that Yun Jian had killed that man and had no power or influence. She was doomed for the rest of her life. However, what they didn't know was that when the two of them were extremely anxious, Yun Jian was sitting on the bench with a calm expression, without the slightest trace of panic. Zhe Province, Min City. Mu Ying's house. Mu Ying, who had taken a medicine made by Yun Jian, was completely fine. It wouldn't be a problem for Mu Ying to live for a few more decades. The feeling of her body rejecting her soul had already disappeared. Mu Ying and Mad Dragon began to live a sweet life again. However, Mu Ying found that after she gave her body to Mad Dragon, although the two of them ate a lot of forbidden fruit, Mad Dragon didn't take off his shirt every time they did it. Even when she boldly proposed to take a bath with him with a blushing face, Wild Dragon rejected her flatly. This made Mu Ying very uncomfortable. However, she wanted to take a bath with him. Oomph. Walala. The sound of Mad Dragon taking a shower came from the bathroom. Mu Ying took the bathroom key and quietly walked to the bathroom door. She inserted the key into the bathroom door lock. With a kacha sound, the door was opened by her. However, when she entered the door, Mad Dragon had already put on a bathrobe and was looking at her with his arms crossed. Seeing this, Mu Ying pouted and turned to walk out. Break up. I want to run away from home." Just as she turned around and took 2 steps, Mad Dragon rushed over and hugged Mu Ying from behind. "I won't allow it. Even if you die, you can only die in my arms." Mu Ying took advantage of the moment when Mad Dragon reached out and hugged her back to pull off the tie on Mad Dragon's bathrobe. She turned around and looked at Mad Dragon's upper body with a look of success on her face. However, what she saw were deep and shallow marks that were obviously imprinted not long ago. It looked like a chest that had been deliberately tortured. The wounds were shocking. Come, wonderful bookhouse. Come. Chapter 2591. These marks and wounds were all left by Mad Dragon when he learned about Mu Ying's physical condition and asked the perverted doctor's son for medicine. The perverted doctor's son burned them with iron and branded them. Even a thick-skinned person would not be able to withstand this kind of punishment that was similar to ancient torture, but Mad Dragon endured it for the sake of his beloved woman. He could have avoided this punishment. With Mad Dragon's own strength, he could have beaten the perverted doctor's son hundreds of times. But for Mu Ying, he did not say a word and forced himself not to use his strength to endure this punishment. Mu Ying saw the scars on Mad Dragon's chest and instantly burst into tears. She carefully stroked Mad Dragon's chest and said with a flustered expression, This is the medicine you and SS asked for me last time? Mu Ying was very smart and hit the nail on the head with one sentence. But just as Mu Ying finished speaking and her tears were about to flow out of her eyes again, Mad Dragon suddenly bent down and kissed her eyes, kissing away the tears that were about to flow out of her eyes. So you can't say anything about leaving me again in this life, or I'll kill you with my own hands and accompany you to hell. Even if he went to hell, he, Mad Dragon, would never let go of her hand. She could only be his woman. If not, then they would go to hell together. Hey Province, Suzhou. Wan Jingxiang, who had hurriedly ran to find his gang's boss, returned to Zhou Ran's house. As soon as he entered Zhou Ran's house, Wan Jingxiang rushed into Zhou Ran's house and said to Yun Jian anxiously, without caring that Zhou Qiao, Wan Yuyu, Mu Zishi, Jing Cheng, and other classmates were still there. Our boss agreed to save you, but he needs to know which gang you're from. Your gang's code name. When Zhengxiang said this, his face was filled with anxiety. To Wan Zhengxiang, it was because of him that Yun Jian was in this situation. Therefore, he had to bear this responsibility. Gang? Code name? Sister, are you really a gangster too? Yun Lian was shocked and asked in a daze. Ever since Yun Jian had said to Yun Mu before she went to save people, Don't you want to know what I've been doing all these years? I'll use my actions to tell you. Whether it was Yun Mu or everyone present, they all thought that Yun Jian had been involved in the underworld all these years. Now that when Zhengxiang asked Yun Jian this question, everyone present was even more convinced of this point. Gangsters at such a young age? So powerful. When Mu Zishi heard this, he was somewhat stupefied. Although they didn't know what Zhengxiang meant when he said that he wanted to save Yun Jian, everyone's attention was now diverted to Yun Jian's identity. Seeing that Yun Jian didn't speak for a long time, when Zhengxiang immediately spoke. Our gang is a reputable gang in Country Z. Our position in the entire Country Z's gangs is already in the top 15. Although there's still a huge gap between us and the #1 Falcon Hall, we'll protect you. Absolutely no problem. The #1 gang in Country Z was Falcon Hall, which was now under the control of Su Zetian. Speaking of Falcon Hall, it was practically a legend. The boss of Falcon Hall was an unfathomable woman, and the current person in charge of Falcon Hall, Su Zetian, was a very powerful person. Wow, Yin Han, your uncle-in-law, is actually a member of such a powerful gang. After hearing Wan Zhengxiang's words, Jing Cheng exclaimed to Yun Mu, Amazing! Wan Yu couldn't help but be stunned. On the other hand, Wan Zhengxiang's gaze was fixed on Yun Jian. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian wouldn't speak, or that she would reject Wan Zhengxiang's claim that she was from a gang, Yun Jian suddenly said, Do you really want to know? Yes, because only by knowing this will our gang's boss be willing to send people to protect you. When Zhengxiang said solemnly, everyone's gaze shifted to Yun Jian. At this moment, Yun Jian's red arc rose. She saw that Zhou Ran, Yin and I, and Yunmu were all looking at her with expressions that said they wanted to know what she had been doing all these years. Pursing her red lips, Yunjian spoke coldly in front of everyone, but her name was like a sudden tsunami that swept through everyone's hearts. The gang I'm in is called Falcon Hall. Codename Rakshasa, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2592, page 1/1. Everyone sucked in a deep breath when they heard Falcon Hall. Yunjian was actually from Falcon Hall. It was no wonder that she possessed such strength. Falcon Hall was indeed a legendary gang. A young girl of Yunjian's age could be trained to such an extent. Everyone's eyes widened and their jaws dropped when they realized that Yunjian was actually from Falcon Hall. After all, not everyone could join a gang like Falcon Hall just because they wanted to. If the three words Falcon Hall had led the crowd to believe that Yunjian had joined Falcon Hall and become an insignificant figure, it would have been the truth. Then the two words Rakshasa at the back smashed everyone's heads hard, causing everyone present to be stunned on the spot, unable to react for a long time. "What did you say?" When Jingxiang couldn't help but roll his eyelids. He stared at Yunjian in disbelief, then asked loudly and sharply, "Wasn't Rakshana the woman who led Falcon Hall to become the #1 gang in Country Z in just a few years? Wasn't she supposed to be a legendary young woman in her 30s? What's wrong? How could he be so much younger than what the legend said?" Mu Zishi was also looking at Yunjian in astonishment. He licked his dry lips, completely losing his composure in front of his classmates. Obviously, there were many gangs in Suzhou, and the security there was not very good. Therefore, the people in Suzhou were more gangsters, especially those who lived in the slums. They were completely different from Qinyiru and the others who lived in Xinjiang Town and Longmen City. Everyone knew about these gangs. Mu Zishi looked at Yunjian's back in front of him. Just as he was about to shout, he saw Yunjian slowly turn around. Her high ponytail flowed naturally, giving off a cool and forthright feeling. All around, the silence was frightening. Yun and Zhou Ran, and Yunmu were so shocked that their faces trembled slightly. Yunshan was pale with fright. When Zhengxiang's expression changed slightly, but he was also slightly stunned. As for Yunmu's classmates, Zhou Qiang, Wan Yuyu, Mu Zishi, and Jing Cheng, they were stunned when they heard that Yunjian was the nationally renowned boss of Falcon Hall at such a young age. After a while, Yunjian, who stood in front of everyone, turned slightly, her lips curling into a stunning red arc as she nodded without denying it. "That's right. Falcon Hall is mine." 10 minutes later, Yunjian sat on one of the few benches in Joran's house, surrounded by a dozen pairs of eyes. "God, I can't believe it. Falcon Hall was founded single-handedly by Yun Ai's sister." Zhou Qiang scratched her short hair and asked Yunjian in astonishment. "The legendary boss of Falcon Hall, Luo Sha, is a woman whose talent, strength, and looks are on par with hers. Looks like she really lives up to her name." Mu Zishi adjusted his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said knowledgeably, "I was worried for nothing." When Jingxiang said with a smile as he wiped the sweat from his forehead that he had just been scared out of, Yunjian ignored everyone's shocked gazes. She stood up and scanned the surroundings. Then, her gaze landed on Yun and Zhou Ran, and Yunmu. She said, "I can't tell you everything that happened in the past 15 years, but since I'm back, I won't let you live like that anymore. I bought a villa worth 30 million yuan in the modern villa forest on the outskirts of Suzhou. Take it as my gift to you." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2593. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. The poorest people in Suzhou lived in the slums. The wealthiest people in Suzhou lived in the modern villas in the suburbs. One would have to be worth at least 5 million yuan to move to the modern villas in the suburbs. In this era, a villa worth more than 30 million yuan was the kind of luxurious villas that were often shown in television dramas. It would take 3 to 5 minutes to drive from the villa's entrance to the Shun family's courtyard. Yun Jian's words were undoubtedly a blow to everyone present. F***CK. Mu Zishi slapped the table hard and stood up at once. Due to the shock, Mu Zishi accidentally tripped when he stood up and fell to the floor with a thud. He did not even care about the pain as he looked up at Yun Jian. F***CK. Rich. Bro, help me check if my heart is still in my chest. Oh my god, I'm about to pee my pants. Mu Zishi grabbed his buddy Jing Cheng's hand, looking like he had aged from the shock. Cut out. Jing Cheng hit Mu Zishi while he was down and pressed his finger against Mu Zishi's forehead. Wan Yuyu's entire body had already stiffened into a stone statue, not moving at all. Yun Shan was so envious that her saliva was about to drip onto the floor, but when Zhengxiang's expression remained unchanged. Logically, Zhou Ran and Yun and I, as Yun Jian's biological parents, should be overjoyed. After all, Yun Jian had been doing well all these years to be able to give them a villa worth 30 million yuan as a greeting gift. However, Zhou Ran sensed something when she heard Yun Jian's words. She rushed to Yun Jian under everyone's gaze and grabbed Yun Jian's hand to ask Yun Jian loudly, Jian, you're still leaving? Aren't you going to stay by our side? As expected of her biological mother, Zhou Ran immediately understood the meaning behind Yun Jian's words. Big sister, are you not going to live with us? Yunin also looked at Yun Jian with an expectant expression and asked. Everyone's heart tightened slightly. Everyone hadn't realized it earlier, but now they all realized it. Since Yun Jian was the boss of Falcon Hall, Rakshasa, it meant that her future path would be completely different from the rest of them. Naturally, her life could not be fixed in the small Tsuzhou of He Province. Under the expectant gazes of Yun Mu, Zhou Ran, and Yun and I, Yun Jian's raised eyebrows slightly smoothed out. She still spoke with a superficial expression, which made everyone present realize that Yun Jian's words were different from the rest. I'm sorry, but I won't stop moving forward for anyone. Staying here is not a life that suits me. From the moment I was abducted and stepped into the world I lived in, the ordinary life of an ordinary person had already left me. If I take a step back, I'll be facing a bottomless abyss. There's no room for choice. So this is all I can do for all of you. Yun Jian's words were a little confusing to those who heard her. Yun Jian's identity as the boss of Falcon Hall, Rakshasa, was destined to be extraordinary. In spite of it, the group understood the other meaning behind Yun Jian's words. Could it be that her identity was far more than that? They could not help feeling doubtful. Just as they were feeling doubtful, Yun Jian, who was sitting on the bench in front of them, stood up. Her red arc slightly pursed, and under everyone's gazes, she continued to speak to Yun and I, Zhou Ran, and Yun Lian, saying a sentence that caused everyone to boil with anger. Back then, my younger brother was abducted because of me. Those people kidnapped him to threaten me in order to control me. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.